were standing in line to clubs I'll never get in. It's like the bottom of the ninth and I'm never gonna win this. Life hasn't turned out quite the way I want it to be. I want a brand new house on an episode of Cribs and a bathroom I can play baseball in, and a king size tub big enough for 10 plus me. I'll need a credit card that's got no limit and a big black chair with a bedroom in it. Gonna join the Mile High Club at 37,000 feet. I want a new tour bus full of old guitars. I'm a star on Hollywood Boulevard. Somewhere between Cher and James Dean is fine for me. I'm gonna trade this life for fortune and fame. I'd even cut my hair and change my name. Cause we all just wanna be big rock stars and live in hilltop houses driving 15 cars. The girls come easy and the drugs come cheap. Well, I'll stay skinny cause we just won't eat. And we'll hang out in the coolest bars in the VIP with the movie stars. Every good gold digger's gonna wind up there. Every playboy bunny with a bleached blonde hair. And well, hey, I wanna be a rock star. Hey, I wanna be a rock star. I wanna be great like Elvis without the tassels. Hire 8 bodyguards that love to beat up assholes. Sign a couple autographs so I can eat my meals for free. I'm gonna dress my ass with the latest fashion. Get a front door key to the Playboy Mansion. Gonna date a centerfold that loves to blow my mind for me. I'm gonna trade this life for fortune and fame. I'd even cut my hair and change my name. Cause we all just wanna be big rock stars and live in hilltop houses driving 15 cars. The girls come easy and the drugs come cheap. Well, I'll stay skinny cause we just won't eat. Hang out in the coolest bars in the VIP with the movie stars. Every good gold digger's gonna wind up there. Every playboy bunny with the bleached blonde hair. And we'll hide out in the private rooms with the
Even if you have never come into contact with a public
We are moving into the new office, and with it came Windows. Yeah, tiny new office, but still the same old terrible joke. You know what's not a joke? Video topic. Performance under Windows 10. Does it move up to Windows 8.1? What about Windows 7 users out there? Do they need to upgrade? Drop a like on this video if you're glad that our upload schedule is such a mess right now that I can't even
Join us on a regular basis. So
to see it. Intel's bringing DDR4 to the mainstream with their all-new Core i7 6700K and Core i5 6600K processors. Check out the link in the video description. Now to start with, the differences between different Windowses are obviously more than just, performance in CPU-intensive tasks. I mean, Windows 8 and the free upgrade to Windows 8.1 brought SMB 3.0, which in theory allows aggregated speeds during network transfers, although I've never gotten it to work. Windows 10 has Cortana, the new Edge browser. Actually, there's one. Let us know if you'd like to see us use our sexy new 200 up, 200 down fiber connection to determine which browser is indeed the fastest by mashing that like button. Ha! I knew I could come up with something. Sorry, where was I? Right. Windows 10 features. It's got DirectX 12, although that won't make much of a difference until some games for it come out. And of course, it's got some UI improvements. Now, that last part probably wasn't getting you too excited about Windows 8, unless you were one of the tiny minority who actually bought a touchscreen laptop. And even though I have one, the lack of a traditional start menu has really put an acorn in my tailpipe over the last couple of years and breathed new life into third-party start menu add-on companies. But with Windows 10, that might be a little different. The UI improvements are many. Some are pretty small, things like automatically prompting me for a second window when I aerosnap, tiling all my open applications when I alt-tab, a huge improvement over that rubbish Rolodex thing that was introduced with Windows Vista. Oh, look, we have a 3D accelerated desktop experience. But some of them are huge. Virtual desktops, which are accessed with Windows and Tab, are finally a Windows feature by default. This has been available for years on Linux OS X and even Windows with third-party tools. And the new start menu, which I actually really, really like. It was as simple as giving me an all apps list and not taking up my whole f***ing screen with the start menu. Good on you, Microsoft. There are still a few things that are broken as all get out, like search. I mean, seriously, if I type uninstall, how is uninstall a program not the first search result? And there are still a few things I just need to learn, like I haven't figured out how to lock notification tray icons, so I can always see certain things like safe remove hardware and networking. So yeah, so far I really like Windows 10. I did an in-place upgrade on my daily driver laptop and a fresh install on my desktop and haven't thought for a moment about reverting to Windows 8.1 or Windows 7 respectively. But what about that performance? Well, I had John, our new benchmarker and writer, put together a small suite of tests and run them for you folks on an identical hardware configuration across Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. All of them freshly installed and with the latest drivers and updates. He used a test bench that consists of an Intel Core i7 5930K, an ASUS X99 Deluxe motherboard, 16 gigs of DDR4, a GTX 980 Ti, an ADATA SP900 SSD, and I guess that's pretty much the relevant components. And the results may shock you. On our test bench, and please note that with Quick Boot enabled and fewer devices in the boot menu and whatnot, these times could be much faster, but the importance here is the relative performance, not the absolute performance. Windows 10 and Windows 8.1 both left Windows 7 in the dust for cold boot times and go to sleep times, but all performed very similarly when it came to wake time. So there you go. In PC Mark 8, I don't really know what to make of that Windows 7 number. There's no way on this blue orb we're standing on that represents real-world performance, but on Windows 8.1 and 10, it basically tells us that they're within spitting distance of each other. Then finally, we arrive at gaming performance, where across a test suite that includes basically a couple of modern games that tax both the CPU and GPU, we ended up with, well, no difference whatsoever. A testament to the repeatability of our gaming tests, if nothing else. But maybe there's more to this. than meets the eye. Right now, for legitimate owners of Windows 7 and 8, Windows 10 is a free upgrade. So while in the past, upgrading for new DirectX support that my graphics card might not even handle, even if games that utilize it come out before the next Windows upgrade cycle, was a bit of a tough sell. This time around, there's that. I mean, DirectX 12 looks ballin' AF, and you can learn more about it in this Tech Quickie video here, but there's also just no downside. So Windows 10 gets a big recommendation from us from a performance point of view. Nothing to lose with our config, although please note we only tested a limited cross-section of games and only one graphics card, so I still think it would be prudent to see if others with similar configs to your own are having any issues. But yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. Thanks for watching, guys. If this video sucked, you know what to do. But if it was awesome, get subscribed, hit that like button, or even consider supporting us directly by using our affiliate code to shop at Amazon, which you can find instructions for here, buying a cool t-shirt like this one, or with a direct monthly contribution through our forum. Now that you're done doing all that stuff, you're probably wondering what to watch next. So check out that little button in the top right corner to check out our moving...
Much information to cover as our privacy is being decimated day by day, month by month. She's a privacy expert and outspoken opponent of RFID. They call her the RFID lady. Implantable microchips, search engine data collection, and retail customer surveillance. Dr. Catherine has authored pro-privacy legislation. She's testified before lawmakers around the world, written for numerous publications, including Scientific American, and granted over 2,000 plus media interviews, including here on the Pete Santilli Show. She joins me right now to talk about I really wanted to find out from her, because I haven't been able to delve into of the couple of topics we're going to discuss, but Windows 10 has hit the market. If you've installed Windows 10 and agreed to its terms and conditions, as we all do, because, of course, that's the contract we have. You either click, yes, you agree to it, or no, you don't get it. But have you really read the terms so they can actually, instead of...
It's horrifying. It's the worst form of malware. So they used to have to break in and do like a black box kind of thing with the gloves on and put it on there. And then they came out with the software. Well, guess what? Windows 10 makes it automatic for every user.
Wow. Wow. Now, their use of service agreement is like 12,000 words, and one of the things buried in there is that they will access, disclose, and preserve personal data, including all of our content, such as all of our emails and private communications. Yeah.
You've got it. So let me tell you what else they do. Not only do they have a keystroke locker, and we'll talk about the implications of that in a minute, but they make a backup copy of every file you create. So if you write a confidential, a legal document, or maybe a letter to your psychiatrist about your drug addiction, whatever it might be, they're capturing everything you type, everything you write, every document you create, every purchase you make, every PDF you download, any file that is stored on the hard drive. They make a backup copy for themselves. And they have said in that 12,000-word user agreement that they will turn that information over to the authorities if they believe there's a reason for it. And they don't even say if they receive a search warrant or if they're legally compelled. They said if there's any kind of reason they think it needs to be handed over. So I could see the government simply saying, I want to know everybody who's ever typed the word, who knows, Ron Paul, or anybody who's ever typed the word Second Amendment, please send us all of the files off their computers, and they would be in a position to do it.
Dr. Catherine, I've heard that they developed this, we're calling it the ability to surveil us, the surveillance technology, but they snuck it in there with the, I guess, under the guise of wanting to tailor marketing. To publish ads and to give commercial benefits to people while they're speaking in their homes about bananas. We'd like to be able to present banana ads on their computers. Isn't that how?
That's a part of it, but what's even more insidious about this is that that's a big part of their motivation. Believe me, they're sitting there thinking, how can we monetize this and turn this into big bucks, like Google has done, because its search engine and email program, as you know, are not a search engine or email. They're market research devices that they use to gather personal information on us. But in the case of Windows 10, they don't say, this is for marketing purposes so we can get you the things you want. They're even nastier and sneakier than that. They say, that the reason we have the microphone on is so that our digital assistant can help you hands-free to get the information into the computer. The reason we have a keystroke logger is so that we can keep track of how you're using the system, how you type, what language you're using, so we can customize things and make them better for you. The reason we make a backup copy of all your files is in the event that you lose your hard drive or somebody steals your computer, then maybe you could reach out to us and we could help you get those files back. So it's all presented as a way to help you, even though in reality, none of this stuff is helpful to us. It is not helpful to us to have Microsoft putting a bug in our homes. It's not helpful for us to have FBI-level keystroke loggers monitoring us. And let me tell you why the keystroke logger is particularly offensive to me. As you know, I helped to create StartMail, which is private email that the government cannot access, that nobody can access. In fact, even we can't read the email that's posted on our service at startmail.com. The way StartMail works, we're based outside of the U.S., so there's no way to compel us to turn over data because we're not subject to the FBI or the NSA or the FISA courts or you name it. We're not subject to that. We'd say fly a kite. So what the Windows 10 keystroke logger allows them to do is, let's say somebody gets a StartMail account and it's secure, it's located offshore, and they can't access it. Everything is super encrypted with 3 levels of encryption. But when you log into your account, you must type in your password to open your user disk to unencrypt your vault. And then you have to type in your PGP or your encryption passphrase, which is a long phrase, like Mary had a little lamb, in order to open up the individual emails. And no one can see that content. Because it's transmitted through a super encrypted pipe. It's kind of like a Brinks truck through the internet that they can see it's going by, but they can't see what's in it, and they can't break it open. It takes like 40 years to crack open an encrypted message. So that information is like in a secure tunnel between Startpage in the Netherlands and our whoever has the email account in the U.S. But if you have Windows 10, then when you type in your password and you type in your PGP passphrase, you've just given the key to unlock all of your encryption to Microsoft. So
Wow.
that means not only that, but when you log into your bank or your investment account or your online, I just created a Social Security account online, and I was thinking, is this going to be secure? And it has all these heavy security questions. What's your father's birthplace, street? It's like, what? Totally things nobody else could ever guess. And I'm thinking this is going to be secure. But if I were using Windows 10 creating that account, Microsoft would not only know the username and password to log into that secure account, but they would know the street that my grandfather was born on. They would know the name of my second grade teacher because they're logging everything you type.
Wow.
So what it means is that you can no longer even encrypt your secrets or protect your personal accounts from Microsoft and by extension from the federal government. So this is revolutionary. We've seen some pretty egregious privacy invasions. We've seen some people, offering apps that access your GPS location, your contact list, and we've said that's disgusting. But we've never, ever seen anything that affects this many people, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people, and is so giving the middle finger, really, to all Americans and to their privacy and to their dignity and to their intelligence. And the part that horrifies me is the mainstream media is not really reporting on this. You're only hearing about it in the tech press. And I have a lot of friends who are techies, who are like security guys, and what they tell me is, yeah, that's really bad. Well, we've figured out what to do and how to fix it. We've just changed all the settings, and we can go into the source code, and we can delete this and that, and so we're not worried about it. And so what's happening is it's really creating two classes of people, Pete. The class of people who is technologically so sophisticated that they can simply override and repair these things so they're not affected. And then the rest of the other 99% of everybody else who are taken to the cleaners and whose every move is monitored. And because the tech people are able to save themselves, I mean, I've had long conversations with people like, what do you mean you're just going to save yourself and you're not going to warn the world? They don't care. I mean, this is the really disgusting part. There's the technological people at the top do not care about the privacy of the rest of us. They care about their own privacy. And if they couldn't find a way to fix this, believe me, they'd be screaming bloody murder. But they've all made changes, configuration settings, and things in the deep level of the computer to protect themselves from Windows 10. And they've just let the rest of us hang out to dry. And I think it's wrong. I think we should have protests with signs outside of Microsoft demanding that they take this back and issue a new release that does not have these features. They're not even features. Does not have this malware embedded in your very operating system.
What is their end game objective? Is it to breach those security boundaries that we've always had? That's been their limitation, or is it to develop AI technology, artificial intelligence technology, to have as much data as they can possibly gather, including voice, video, and textual? What do you think it is?
Right. So here's really the issue: is the marketing and security and surveillance and law enforcement communities and the AI people, and they are almost like a cult. They've got like a religious kind of a concept going on that they're going to figure out how to know all the data and live forever. So those people have always had a real limitation. And if you think about this, you'll understand what I'm saying. They have a real limitation in that they can put all the surveillance cameras in the world. They can monitor all the banking transactions in the world. But they can't figure out what you say to your wife when you turn out the lights and you guys are lying there in the bedroom talking about something important. They can't hear that. They don't know what your thoughts are. They don't know what your conversations with your best friend over a cup of coffee or in a walk in the woods are. And that's the part. See, this is almost, it's like OCD. It's like an obsessive compulsive disorder for these people. You've heard about people wanting, being so greedy that they have to own all the money in the world. These people are so greedy, they want to own all the information in the world. And the notion that you would ever have a private conversation, a private activity, a private thought in your own home makes them crazy. And so they spend all of their time, and I believe this is satanically motivated. This is a spiritual endeavor here.
I think so.
They spend their time trying to come up with creative and manipulative and invasive and sneaky and subtle and effective ways to break through all the barriers that prevent them from having all the knowledge they want. And that's why you'll see all of these things. I've talked about on my radio program, I do a daily show from 4 to 6 Eastern, and I've talked about on my show how Google has come out with the most horrifying patent I have ever seen. I wish every radio show in the country, every Time magazine would make it a front page story. Google wants for there to be the future home that would be completely secure and totally efficient and offer all these benefits, but what it's really about is that your every room in your house would be bugged with microphones, that it would have video cameras, that even your alarm clock would say, oh, she's setting the alarm for 8 o'clock instead of her usual 6:30. And it would send all this information, and your alarm clock would be able to tell when you fell asleep. It would literally monitor your breathing in the bed.
Oh, my goodness.
And it would send this information. Now, this is Google, and they've got the power to do it. This is a multi-billion-dollar company because they're a market research company that knows everything about us, and that's why they're rich. So they want to install this stuff in our homes so that, and guess who they want to send it to? Here's where this really kills me. They want to send it to themselves, obviously, all this data. They want to send it to law enforcement, obviously. They want to send it to marketers and corporations, of course. They want to send it to public health officials, no big surprise there. And they want to send it to academic researchers so they can study us like rats in a cage in our own homes.
Wow.
Now, nowhere in this patent is any kind of benefit for you, the individual. There's nothing. I mean, they try. They're stretching. They talk about how they're going to monitor, get this, Pete, every person who comes in your home will be identified, monitored, and reported to authorities.
Can you
Every
imagine?
person. So if there is ever an intruder, then they would know who the intruder is and you would be safe. But what this really means is that they know who's in your home, they're listening to your conversations, they know where that person's home is. They even said this would be great because after 10 p.m., if your teenagers aren't home, we'll be able to identify precisely where they are because we know everybody who's in every house. And we'll be able to tell you, your teenager is down the street at the Joneses' house. Can you imagine?
And you know what's really frightening about it is it's outside of, let's call it extra constitutional, because outside of the legislative realm, as far as protecting our privacies, is we're clicking that button, agreeing to it voluntarily for commercial reasons. We're giving up our privacy protections in the Constitution to the private sector, aren't we?
That is correct. And see, this is the brilliance of 20th century tyranny. 19th century tyranny was tanks and guns and mustard gas and concentration camps. 21st century tyranny that we're living in right now is the tyranny of basically being able to convince the public through knowing so much about us. See, we reveal all of our thoughts and sentiments and psychological reactions through social media in a way that has never before been possible for the controllers of our world to understand how to manipulate us. So now they can do a manipulation. They can put something up on Fox News or CNN, and they can watch the reaction, engage, and modify the next message. So they know exactly how to manipulate us into wanting the very tools, into putting the shackles on our own ankles, into putting the surveillance cameras in our own homes, into carrying the tracking devices in our back pockets and being paranoid that we would ever leave the house without them. See, the brilliance of this is it cost Stalin an awful lot of money to figure out how to round up and kill 20 million people, and some say 100 million people in the Soviet Union in the last century. It cost Mao Zedong a ton of money in bullets to be able to just take out his opposition. It's been expensive to monitor and control people in the past. But what they figured out now, Pete, is how to get the public to pay for the privilege of being monitored, to pay for the privilege of being controlled and surveilled. And so instead of Stalin or Mao Zedong or Hitler having to figure out a way to create a couple 100 million tracking devices and then force everybody to carry them and then have some kind of enforcement project where you have to have law enforcement following up and arresting people and putting them in jail and paying for all of that. Instead, they've come up with smartphones, ways to manipulate them to be addictive, which have been intentionally built into them to addict us, and then get us to pay them $600 a pop to have them. So not only do they not have to pay to develop the nasty technology, but they get rich in the process, and we thank them all the way to the concentration camp.
We voluntarily submit to the tyranny through the convenience of their features and benefits.
That's right. And see, when they talk about the killer app, have you heard that phrase? We got to come up with a killer app.
Yes.
They mean that literally.
Oh, my goodness.
It doesn't just mean the thing that's going to make it irresistible that you're going to have it. It's literally the killer app. And every single one of these devices, from the video games to the smartphones to the Gmail to the every one of them, has been carefully designed with an understanding of human psychology to cause you to love them, to be addicted to them, and to fight to the death if somebody tries to take it away from you. And the same thing is going to happen with the surveillance in your home.
Yeah, and this Windows 10 operating platform is not necessarily going to be limited to your desktop computer in one room. I understand they're wanting to take this operating system and put it and install it into our appliances all throughout our house so that we're completely immersed in this two-way communication system.
And this is Google's vision of the future. When I was saying your alarm clock would do all those things, I'm not kidding. They have detailed instructions for how it will happen. Google is working with appliance manufacturers right now to figure out how to build in this kind of capability So that what they're building, they're calling the Internet of Things. And we talked about it 10 years ago in our book, Spy Chips, which should be on every Liberty bookshelf because it's more relevant today than when we wrote it. That every physical object on Earth will be a bug. Every object will be bugged. You'll open your cupboard door in your kitchen, and your cupboard door will send a signal to a computer somewhere. Oh, somebody's in the kitchen. They just opened the cupboard door. You'll take your coffee cup out. Your coffee cup will have a chip. Your counter will be totally bugged. And when you set the coffee cup on the counter, I'm not making this up. This sounds insane. I've actually seen plans to do exactly this from big corporations, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, you name it, big companies are planning this. You set the coffee cup on the counter, and it immediately knows, oh, somebody's about to fill a coffee cup. And when you go over to the coffee maker and you turn it on, they'll say, oh, well, we know that only one person's home today, or we know that 6 people are home, or whatever. How much coffee are they making? How much is being consumed by each person? How many coffee cups is that pot going into? It's literally that level of detail. And they want us to put tracking devices on ourselves so they can know who's holding the coffee cup, who picked up who flipped the button on the coffee maker. And here's the thing, Pete. 10 years ago when we wrote Spy Chips, and I really want people to read it because it will open your eyes. When we wrote Spy Chips, we talked about the fact that the big challenge that all the researchers, Carnegie Mellon and IBM, all these companies, their biggest challenge was to figure out how in the world are we going to get people to voluntarily put a tracking device on their own bodies? Because that's the missing component. We can get the manufacturers to put the thing in the toaster and the alarm clock. We can get the home builders to build in all this stuff. But we can't get the people to wear the trackers. And in their own home, they're not going to carry around a cell phone, darn it. When they're out mowing the lawn or when they're popping out of the shower, they're not going to have the cell phone on them. How are we going to get them to track themselves? And believe me, we actually have a whole chapter on this, of all of their challenging different experiments to try to see what would work. What's going to be the killer app to get people to put the tracking device on themselves? And you know what? They're finding it. And it's the Fitbit. Do you know that the Fitbit, where people voluntarily pay to put a tracker on their wrist, has been the very thing that Haitian refugees in Guantanamo 20 years ago called the mark of the beast and tried to saw off?
Wow. Have you heard?
Now people are paying for it.
Dr. Catherine, have you heard about, I'm glad we're having this conversation. You may not know about this. Have you heard of the Think app, THYNC, Think?
No, what is that?
Okay,
Ew.
I'm gonna put a link to the Think app. It's a brand new app. Listen to this. It's a device that you put on your head. You wear it on your forehead, and if you want energy, now when you watch this, it's going to be horrifying when you watch this. We just discovered it.
I'm looking at it now. You are kidding me.
No,
she looks like an android.
If you want calm and relaxation on your cell phone, you press a button, or on your iPad, and you press a button, and it sends a signal to your brain. If you want calm, or if you want energy. If you want energy, you push the energy button.
Companies putting signals in my brain. Are you kidding me?
Can you imagine? They're transmitting waves to your brain, communicating back and forth.
Oh my God.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And
and today they're going to transmit calming energy. In the future, they're going to transmit psychotic energy, or give all my money to the government energy, or the list goes on and on. This is terrible.
It's frightening to know.
I can't believe this.
It's frightening to know that they will have the ability to two-way communicate with your brain. Now, you will be accepting the Calmness app or the Calmness button or the energy button, but they're having the ability to communicate with you. Okay, as we conclude this segment, thanks for taking the time out. I know you have a busy schedule, of course. The first step in resisting this stuff is to be aware of it. A lot of this stuff is happening behind the scenes. Most people don't even know what is contained in it.
People need alternatives.
Yes,
if I could just really quickly, the alternative to using Google, I help to create StartPage.com, so you don't have to give all your information to the global brain. So StartPage.com should be everybody's search engine, and stop using Google. And StartMail should be everybody's email, and stop using Gmail, because the reason they give you Gmail is to lure you in to their environment so they can read all your email, which otherwise they couldn't get access to. So that's StartMail.com. For $1.66 a month, you and 2 friends can have an account. that will enable you to escape Big Brother. So everybody needs to switch to encrypted email. If you've installed Windows 10, uninstall it. Go back to Windows 7. You've lived with it this long. You can live with it longer. And at some point, Windows is going to be forced to issue a privacy-friendly version of Windows 10. It's coming. I know they're working on it.
I certainly hope
And
so.
finally, if you are concerned about all these things and you can feel the spiritual undertones of evil that are wrapping themselves around all of the people on the planet, I've written a book that talks about this from a biblical perspective. It's called I Won't Take the Mark, and it's about the mark of the beast. Because this is leading to us putting an implant in our right hand or our forehead that looks a lot like this think thing in order to engage.
To need one too, because he just murdered a lasagna and a person. The right to a lawyer is a pillar of American jurisprudence, but it's a right that we've only had since 1963, when the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that any person who is too poor to hire a lawyer cannot be assured a fair trial unless a lawyer is provided for him. It's an idea so obvious, you can't believe there was ever a time that we didn't have it. Like corn on the cob holders that are shaped like corn on the cobs. No one should ever have had to come up with those. They're essential to the fabric of American life. The problem is, our public defender system is currently massively overburdened. Depending on the jurisdiction, anywhere from 60 to 90% of criminal defendants need a publicly funded attorney, and the system is creaking under that weight.
Right now, there are about 20 public defenders handling up to 250 cases.
In New Orleans, for example, each public defender handles roughly 350 cases a year.
Public defenders in Fresno County often work on 1,000 cases a year, when state guidelines say they shouldn't be doing more than 150.
1,000 cases in a year. That's nearly 3 cases per day. Those are Gerard Depardieu wine consumption numbers at breakfast. And with caseloads that heavy, public defenders cannot possibly prepare an effective defense. A study in New Orleans a few years back found that the city had some part-time defenders who could only spend an average of 7 minutes per case. And that is not long enough to prepare anything. If I only had 7 minutes to prepare this show, I definitely would not be talking about public defenders right now. I'd be desperately trying to fill time by listing the Muppets in order of f***ability. And I'll do it now. Fozzie first, obviously. Obviously, you go Fozzie first. Most attractive thing is a sense of humour. Then you got to go Rolf. You've got to go Rolf. Then you know what? I'm going Swedish Chef. And I'm finishing up with Sam the Eagle, because you know he's into some freaky business. Freaky. And look, this is just the beginning of the problem. Some places don't even have a public defender's office. And some counties just contract cases out in bulk to the lowest bidder. And at its worst, this can result in a system known as meet 'em and plead 'em, where the vast majority of defendants plead out and never even go to trial.
90 to 95% of all criminal cases, state and federal, are resolved by plea bargaining.
Now, just think about that. About 95% of criminal cases never make it to trial. If Law and Order reflected reality, their episodes would be pretty short. It'd basically just be, how does your client plead? Guilty, Your Honour, and then this. And as a viewer, you would justifiably feel cheated by that. And look, it is easy not to care about this. It's easy to assume that if someone is being represented by a public defender, they're probably guilty. But many are not, and some only plead because they feel they have no alternative. Look at Irma Faye Stewart. She was arrested in a drug sweep, but claimed she was innocent. She faced a 10-year sentence and was stuck in jail because she couldn't afford bail. She said her court-appointed lawyer urged her to take a plea deal, and she reluctantly agreed.
I asked him once tonight, if I can plead for 5-year probation, just let me go home to my kids.
She admitted to a crime she denies committing just to spend time with her children. That is horrifying, especially because I would be willing to commit a crime just to not have to spend time with any children. They are loud cesspools of bacteria with nothing interesting to say. Oh, you want to grow up and be a princess? I'll tell you what happens to princesses, actually. Google Diana plus truth. Do it. Do it. Google it. Google it. Google it, actually. Open your eyes. Being a princess ain't fun, actually. Now, after Irma pled guilty, the prosecution's case collapsed, and the other defendants who didn't take a plea deal had their charges dropped. But Irma could not take her plea back, so she had to spend 5 years on probation, during which she was ineligible for some form of public assistance and wound up homeless. And that is the problem with a system that can allot as little as 7 minutes to helping people make decisions that can affect you for the rest of your life. Our public defender system is dangerously under-resourced. One report found out that 40% of all county-based public defenders have no investigators on staff. That's 40% of lawyers forced to sit at their desks, Googling where to get exonerating evidence and hitting "I'm feeling lucky." And the offices those desks are in could potentially lack basic standards of workplace health and safety.
Tough to do your job when you're competing with countless roaches crawling around your office, but that is the work environment endured by employees at Augusta's Public Defender's Office, and it's so bad that the office had to close early today. And this infestation is nothing new. It's been going on for 4 years.
That office is getting to a point where roaches are outnumbering the lawyers. And unless one of those roaches happens to have a law degree from the University of Rochester and can help take on some clients, that's going to be a problem. As for New Orleans, their public defender's office has actually put up a crowdfunding page to help make up their budget shortfall. And it's currently only raised 19% of its goal. And look, nobody should be in jail because a Kickstarter didn't meet its goal. If anything, some people should be in jail because a Kickstarter did meet its goal, like this one for an actual giant inflatable Lionel Richie head. You two gentlemen should be locked up all night long. All night, all night, all night long. All night, all night. Hey, Jumba Jumba. Hey, Jumba Jumba. But despite all these enormous challenges, there are still some amazing lawyers, like Travis Williams. He frames every acquittal and puts it on his wall. But guess where he puts his losses?
I'm gonna get the last name of every case I've lost tattooed on my back. Right now it's only 5, and hopefully I won't fill my back up. That's the goal. But since the wins go on the wall, I decided the losses have to go somewhere and have go on my back. They're gonna be with me forever.
He tattoos the names of the cases he's lost on his back. That is a truly heroic lawyer. He's like Atticus Finch, only real and not, as it turns out, a horrible racist. Screw you, Finchy, go f*** a mockingbird. The point is, many public defenders do heroic work despite facing overwhelming institutional obstacles, including this incredible incident involving a Florida judge.
Stop pissing me off. Just sit down. I'll take care of it. I don't need your help.
No, you know what? I'm the public defender. I have a right to be here, and I have a right to stand and represent
sit
my
down.
clients.
If you want to fight, let's go out back and I'll just beat your ass.
Now, that is clearly a disgrace, although I will say, fights like that would make jury duty a lot more interesting. Your Honor, we have reached a verdict. We find the proceedings to be f***ing awesome. Incidentally, that judge returned to the courtroom and called 7 cases without the public defender being present, and he's still on the bench. And look, a bad judge can come and go, as the head of programming at NBC will tell you. But access to a lawyer is supposed to be a constitutional right, and it is increasingly under threat. For instance, in 4 states, you can make so little that you qualify for food stamps, but still not be poor enough to get state-funded representation. And in at least 43 states, you can be billed for a public defender. Meaning, in these states, we have a system where conceivably, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you, provided that you pay that attorney. Which is absurd. You can't tell people something's free and then charge them for it. This is the American judicial system, not Candy Crush. And for what this can look like on a human level, meet Larry Thompson. In 2010, he was arrested in Florida for driving with a revoked license, which was a felony charge because he'd had multiple driving violations before. Larry was sent to jail, where he applied for a public defender, which in Florida, incredibly, requires a $50 application fee. He couldn't afford to pay that or his bail, so he was stuck in jail for 59 days, at which point he gave up and pled no contest to get out and was released on time served. But in Florida, if you use a public defender and are found guilty, even by plea, you then owe attorney's fees and costs regardless of your ability to pay. So Larry now owed not just the $50 public defender application fee, but also an extra $100 fee for having used the public defender, and even another fee of $100 to pay the prosecution's costs, which is like a bully taking your lunch money and then charging you an additional lunch money reallocation fee. But they still weren't done. On top of those and other fees for the crime he pled no contest to, the court then added partial payment fees each month for the next several months, bringing Larry's tab to $675. And that all brings us to about a month ago, when Larry was actually arrested for contempt of court as a result of not paying those fees. An arrest, incidentally, for which they charged him a $210 administrative fee. At this point, they may as well have just slapped on an irony fee for good measure, because it turns out having no money in Florida can be really fucking expensive. Oh, and one more thing. When they arrested Larry, he was receiving hospice care for a terminal pulmonary condition and was so ill, the jail was forced to send him to the hospital, where he was watched by 2 guards and chained by his ankles to his hospital bed. Luckily, he was eventually released, and his debt was paid by donors who'd heard his story. But he still, understandably, could not quite believe what had just happened to him.
I never knew they would actually arrest a person in my condition for not being able to pay money, because I have to pay rent. So I can't see them keep arresting me over and over to take me back to jail, to charge me $250 more that I have to agree to, or else I'm sitting in jail when I can't get oxygen in jail like I need it. So they actually issuing me a death sentence.
None of this makes any sense. It doesn't even make fiscal sense, because the state of Florida did collect the $885 in fines that Larry owed them, but in doing that, they spent thousands of dollars needlessly imprisoning him, and surely Florida could have used that money for something they badly need, like, I don't know, rehab programs for meth-addicted swamp raccoons. I'm assuming accurately. But the point is, 50 years after the Supreme Court gave everyone the fundamental right to an attorney, even if you can't afford one, we now have a system where the most vulnerable people are potentially being charged for access to a hideously broken system. And we either need to fix that, or at the very least, update the Miranda warning in our cop shows to reflect reality.
Hey, freeze!
You have the right to remain silent.
You have the right to remain silent.
You have the right to remain silent.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney,
One will be provided for you.
I get it.
Hey, we're not done.
I'm not done.
I'm not finished.
That attorney may have 300 other cases that he or she is working on.
That's not a joke.
Literally, 300 other cases. We potentially have a total of 7 minutes to prepare your defense.
Do you know how short 7 minutes is? You know how short 7 minutes is?
Billy Joel's scenes from an Italian restaurant is 37 seconds longer than that.
Bottle of red.
That attorney
That attorney may be exhausted, unable to think straight.
The attorney is likely to be grossly underpaid.
Or working in an office crawling with cockroaches.
You know what really blows me?
That attorney may pressure you to take a guilty plea.
Statistically,
There's a 90+% chance that you will take that guilty plea.
that attorney may get challenged to a fight in the hallway by a judge.
Guess where? I don't know.
Guess!
Come on, guess.
Florida?
Of course it was Florida. How could it not be Florida?
One more thing, that attorney that was provided for you may not be free.
If you lose, you may have to pay him.
You might even have to pay the prosecutor.
Is that constitutional? It's constitutional as You piece of shit!
And all this assumes that we can even pay for that lawyer. How's the Kickstarter campaign doing?
No, not even close.
Not good at all.
Now, do you understand your rights as I have explained them to you?
No.
What?
No.
Basically, you're
bail. We're so used to it, it has become a fixture of American life.
Down here at the shore, 1 minute you got 3 girls in a jacuzzi, next minute somebody's in jail, and you have to bail them out. That's what happens down at the shore.
The other thing that happens down at the shore, chlamydia. Just a medically astounding rate of chlamydia. At its heart, America's bail system sounds pretty simple. If you're charged with a crime, the court might ask for an amount of money as bond and then return it to you once you show up for trial. And if you have that money, it's no big deal. But if you don't, you can be in big trouble. Just look at one example, a man called Miguel. He was arrested for driving with a suspended license. The court set bail at $1,000 and he had a choice, pay it or await a trial in Rikers Island. And I'll let Miguel and his wife take the story from there.
I wouldn't wish Rikers on my worst enemy because it's rough.
It was hard because I had to try to borrow money from this person and this person and this person to try to get him out. He told the judge, I can't afford a $1,000 bail. So he really didn't have a choice but to plead guilty.
Now, whether he was guilty or not, the fact is a non-violent offender spent time in Rikers because he didn't have $1,000. And this is a systemic problem. Increasingly, bail has become a way to lock up the poor regardless of guilt, because Miguel was a family man who posed no danger to society whatsoever, and he was stuck in Rikers, whereas millionaire Robert Durst, who'd been accused of murder in Texas, had a completely different experience of the bail system.
I had been told by the detective that you've been charged with murder. Bail has been set at $250,000.
But was your intention when you put up the $250,000 to run away?
Oh, goodbye $250,000. Goodbye jail. I'm out.
I'm out? That, of course, is an excerpt from Robert Durst's children's books, Goodbye Jail. Goodbye money, goodbye bail. I killed them all, but goodbye jail. Of course, of course. The problem is, the frequency and cost of bail have risen dramatically, and it is disproportionately hurting the poor. In fact, in 2013, an analysis of New Jersey's jail population found that nearly 40% were being held solely because they couldn't meet the terms of their bail, which is crazy. Jail is supposed to be for dangerous criminals. If 40% of a group don't meet the basic criteria to be there, that should change your perception of what that group is. If 40% of the Girl Scouts were grown men, you'd feel weird about buying cookies from them. So what happens if you can't make bail? Well, much like a game of Fuck, Marry, Kill with Crosby, Stills and Nash, there are a few terrible scenarios. Option 1, you sit in jail. And again, if you're poor, as this defense attorney explains, that has immediate consequences.
Our clients work at jobs where if you're absent, you're fired. Our clients live in shelters or in transitional housing, places where if you're not there for the night, your place is gone. So there are a lot of different ways in which incarceration, even for a short period of time, can really destroy someone's life.
Exactly. Jail can do for your actual life what being in a marching band can do for your social life. Even if you're just in for a little while, it can destroy you. Destroy you. But that means it's no wonder that many defendants who can't afford bail favour option number 2, simply pleading guilty even if you're not, as a former public defender explains.
You sit in jail because you can't afford to pay your way to freedom, and you're often confronted with a deal that goes like this. Plead guilty, get out. Maintain your innocence and go to trial, stay in.
And poor people are regularly choosing to admit guilt just to get out of there, which isn't good. The only time that's appropriate is in a Catholic confessional. What do you mean, is there anything else? I don't know, I masturbated into a kiwi fruit. Is that what you want to hear? Just let me leave. I have stuff to do. And the problem is, if you do plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit, that has its own downsides. Because unfortunately, on a job application, next to the question, have you ever been convicted of a crime, check yes or no, most don't then leave 4 pages of blank space to explain the social and economic inequalities inherent in the legal system. And that brings us to your final option, commercial bail bondsmen. You know, the people who make amazing ads like these.
Grumpy's bail bond has busted out all over Middle Tennessee.
I ain't going out like that. I'ma call for bail bonds cause they got my back. They got me out in no time. Now I'm back on track.
Price bail bond.
Let God release you on a payment plan by calling me. I'm Bishop Barry of Jesus Christ Bail Bonds. 410-292-3029. You're locked up and afraid.
Bail out.
Bail out.
Bail out.
Bail out.
Bail out.
Bail out. Jesus Christ Bail Bonds.
Yes, Jesus Christ bail bonds. Amazing. Well, I will say, it is a little weird given that Jesus, pretty memorably, I think, was not bailed out. I mean, he did eventually escape custody, but it was a real workaround of the system. Now, here is how that system works, though. Bail bondsmen promise the court to pay your bail if you fail to show up for a trial. In exchange, you pay them 10 to 15% of the bail amount, which they then keep regardless of how your trial goes. So if your bail is $5,000 and you're found innocent, then you've basically just paid a $750 fee to a bondsman for doing absolutely nothing wrong. And paying $750 for absolutely nothing should be reserved for one thing and one thing only, 6-month gym memberships. That's it. You're not going to use it, Gerald. You're going to use the treadmill twice and that's it. This is learning to speak Korean all over again, Gerald. And if you don't show up for your trial, bail bondsmen routinely hire bounty hunters to track you down, and they have a frightening amount of power.
In all but 4 states, the companies are legally allowed to take almost any measure necessary to capture a client, including crossing state lines and breaking into homes. It's a dangerous business for everyone involved, with few rules and little oversight.
Well, they're not kidding. In 18 states, anyone can become a bounty hunter regardless of education, training, or prior criminal history. Becoming a bounty hunter is basically a lot like becoming a social media expert. All it takes is one to get bad enough and not caring about whether strangers hate you or not. But then, the news that any idiot can be a bounty hunter shouldn't really be that surprising to you if you've ever turned on A&E and stumbled across this.
I am a lawman on a mission from God. When I say, freeze, they know what I'm saying.
How's it going, man?
The only way this guy will get away from us is if he kills himself right now and jumps into a pool of sharks.
Okay. I hate to be a stickler over chronology, Dog, but how do you kill yourself and then jump into a pool of sharks? That's the kind of attention to detail, Dog, that makes me worry about you operating as an unregulated vigilante. Now, that show was so popular, it inspired pretty much every other bail business to pitch themselves as a reality show. Just click around online and you will find sizzle reels for a veritable smorgasbord of similar shows.
The bottom line is, while you're on bond, we own your ass.
Dear idiot, we're coming to get you.
Bounty hunting is the natural high. You gotta think like them, be like them, and react quicker than them.
Put your hands up.
You want tough. You want action. Meet Big Penny. They call him Teddy Bear. Denise, the Huntress.
It doesn't stop there. There's also Richard, the screwdriver. Richard L., the other Richard. Alison, the Greco-Roman wrestler. Caroline, the one who took up archery after watching the Hunger Games. And don't forget Jennifer, the arthritic alpaca in a bowler hat. Actually, you know what? I now regret making fun of that. Now that I'm seeing the cast, I get the appeal. I want to see those characters grow. Clearly, these shows are in a competitive marketplace, and the problem is, when people try to stick out, ideas like this happen.
So what do we do differently? We don't just bounty hunt, we bounty race.
Each week, 2 new teams of bounty hunters go head-to-head. Welcome to the most dangerous competition on television, Bail Chasers.
Okay, first of all, the most dangerous competition on television is The Bachelorette. Those women have loved and they've lost. Love is a reward, but it's also a risk, goddammit. It's a risk. She's putting herself on the line. She's there for the right reasons. She sees her husband in that room. And second, it says something about how comfortable we all are with how our bail system works, that a TV show where people with guns hunt humans for sport seems legitimate because we just think, well, they're just doing their actual job. And when you give bounty hunters this kind of power, bad things happen.
Veteran Gene Travis says he was sitting with his wife on his Bethpage front porch. Next thing he knows, his barn is being searched, and Travis has a stun gun pointed at his back. The intruders, Mark Brummett and his wife Angela, bounty hunters who police say had the wrong home.
Clay was shot by one of the bondsmen. He was then transported to Ermac, where he died.
Was a bounty hunter justified in tasing a Midwest City homeowner last Saturday? Was another justified in shooting his dog? Police say the videotape they took says no.
Yeah, the video says no. Basic human decency says no. Even a magic 8-ball, having seen that, would say, holy shit, I can't believe you're even asking me. No! Look, our current bail system makes no sense, and it does a lot of harm. And the frustrating thing is, we've known this for a long time. Just watch this TV news special from 1964.
Yes, the jails are bursting at the seams. A problem of great concern to New York City Commissioner of Correction Anna Cross.
Remaining in jail because you can't get bail is really being punished before you're even found guilty. As far as I was concerned, that was not just. That was destroying our concept of justice.
That's right. This problem has been obvious since it was considered okay to wear a wastebasket on your head. But look, here's the good news. There is a better way, and it's already in use in our federal courts and in Washington, D.C.
Judges in Washington are allowed to set money bail only if the defendant can afford it. The results have been far fewer people spending time behind bars.
We are the only city in America where tonight, at our jail, there is not a single man or woman who is sitting because they don't have the money to meet their money bond.
And it's a testament to the state of our justice system that qualifies as bragging, because that should be the norm. He's like a bus driver showing up at school saying, 23 kids picked up, 23 kids dropped off, I pitched a perfect game. Pre-trial services works like this. After you're arrested, specialists assess if you're dangerous or a flight risk. If a judge decides that you're not, you can go home, and they may monitor you with things like drug tests or ankle monitors. They even call you to remind you of your court dates. It's a system built on interviews, pre-arranged appearances, and trust. Much like Scientology marriages, only in this case, much more effective. And pre-trial service programs have succeeded around the country in trust. Much like Scientology marriages, only in this case, much more effective. And pre-trial service programs have succeeded around the country in places ranging from Oregon to Florida. And it is a truly frightening state of affairs when Florida is a model for progressive change. It shouldn't be a judicial example for anything. Did you know, by the way, that under Florida law, if you possess over 5 grams of meth, you can marry it? That's a fact. That's a legal fact. That's an actual photo that ran in a newspaper's wedding section in Florida. And yet, even counties in Florida recognized our money bail system is broken. And not only is pre-trial services better, it's cheaper. A recent assessment of one system showed it costing only 1/10 as much as keeping someone locked up, which makes sense because calling someone to check in costs virtually nothing. This message brought to you by your mother. Your mother, she brought you into this world and would like to hear your f***ing voice once in a while. So if pre-trial services are fairer, better and cheaper, why aren't we all using it? Well, maybe because thanks to reality shows, we think that this is what justice looks like.
We're gonna hunt this scum down.
Girl! No! Bad dog. So maybe we just need a new kind of reality show to get us used to the alternative.
You want tough? You want action? Meet Steve Karp. He's one of the most respected pre-trial services caseworkers in the United States.
So, let's see. Okay, looks like you were ticketed with public urination. No priors. Seems like a one-off sort of thing. Can we count on you to be back here in 6 weeks for your trial? Of course. Great. We're done here. anything we can talk about? I mean, no. This is a routine thing. Statistically, he's virtually guaranteed to turn up. We're done here. We're done here.
They call Steve the hand grenade. And he works with a crack team of legal enforcers. Meet Deborah.
Oh, hello, this is Deborah from Pretrial Services. I'm just calling to remind you about your upcoming court date this Thursday. Well, you're welcome.
They call her the Viper.
I feel like a cat, you know. Back to work.
And then there's Brett.
So all these are risk assessments? This is all computerized, but I keep a hard copy, just in case.
That's why they call him the Annihilator. And finally, Gerald, the guy in charge of urine tests.
Clear? If there's something in there that's illegal, I'm gonna sniff it out, because that's what I do. I'm a piss sniffer. We got one.
They call him the Nose.
You really gonna make a TV show out of this? Who's gonna watch it?
You will. Because this fall, we'll be bringing you all the thrills and excitement of pre-trial supervision as this elite team brings people to justice.
Well, we don't bring them to justice. It's more like we make arrangements for them to bring themselves to justice.
Ignore that. This show is full of high-stakes drama.
You better pray I don't get you for Secret Santa this year.
You don't want to with Deborah.
An inter-office romance.
Gerald is a bloodhound.
Oh, yeah, she wants me. And if it wasn't for all them cats, I would hit that. I would knock the bottom out of it.
But most importantly, we take you closer to the action.
Filling out forms and filing them in triplicate. We won't lock you up if your crime's not significant. If you get a ticket for a public urination, we won't lock you up so you lose your occupation. We ain't kicking in doors, screaming dead or alive. This is an office job. We on the whole mad fly. The system works well, so there's no need for nervousness. It's all in the game at Pretrial Services.
Pre-trial services. Coming this fall to A&E. It's cost-effective, motherfucker.
Of America's only formal moo-moos is judges. Wearers of America's only formal moo-moos. Judges occupy an exalted position in American life, but as important as they are, we tend not to think about them very much unless one of them makes news, as happened earlier this month.
A federal court last month lifted Alabama's ban on same-sex marriage. But Roy Moore, the state's Supreme Court Chief Justice, ordered state judges to ignore the federal ruling.
Yes, Alabama Judge Roy Moore refused an order to let gay people marry, living up to his state slogan, Alabama, boldly refusing to accept diversity and the inevitable since 1819. Now, just out of interest, what was his judicial reasoning for such a decision?
I think that gay marriage is an alteration of the definition of marriage, and the United States Supreme Court does not have the authority, or the federal courts do not have the authority to interpret a word that disputes the Constitution.
Well, hold on. Not only can the Supreme Court override a state, that's basically its job. That's like telling Dill it can't ruin any foodstuff it comes into contact with. That's what Dill does. Get out of everyone's food, Dill. You're a filthy weed, you wrecking ball. Now, you might be thinking, how did that man get to become the highest judicial officer in the state? Well, like 85% of state judges in America, he was elected. 39 states hold elections for judges, and America is virtually alone in doing this. In fact, there's only one other country on Earth that does it on this scale. And guess which? You're wrong, it's Bolivia. A country you think about so little, you haven't even realised that's not Bolivia. This is Bolivia. Actually, that's still not Bolivia. This is Bolivia. Or is it? Or is it? This game is never not going to be fun. Now, America has been electing judges since the early 1800s. And the thing is, it all began from a good impulse.
Judicial elections originated as a reform measure, so people were concerned that, judges were being selected behind closed doors. There wasn't any kind of public accountability.
Okay, and public accountability sounds great. The problem is, for many judges nowadays, there's almost none of that. Most run unopposed. Last year in LA County, 150 out of 151 incumbent judges ran unopposed. And come on, they could at least go through the motions of pretending there was another candidate. Just throw a robe on a pelican and tape a gavel to his wing. Or I'll tell you what, you're in LA, just pretend you're considering Blake Lively for the job. Movie studios do that all the time. And the problem is, whenever a judge does face a challenger, they have to run like a politician. And that's why many states are subjected to the bizarre spectacle of ads like these.
Hi, I'm Alan Lawfrey, and I'm running for our Supreme Court. It's Lawfrey, as in law and free. This is my house. Come on in. There's the kitchen. Something smells good. In my family room, my wife Kelly Lawfrey and our son Justice Lawfrey. That's right, Justice Lawfrey.
Yes, sir.
Yep, I call my son Justice, I call my dog Preamble, and I call my penis the gavel. Vote for me. Boom, 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 boom. And sometimes campaigns opt to sell a judge with sheer catchiness.
There's a judge they call Paul Newby. He's got criminals on the run. Paul Steely stares, got them running scared, and he'll take them down one by one. Paul Newby, he's a tough old judge, respected everywhere. Paul Newby, justice tough but fair. Paul Newby, criminals best beware.
What just happened? Am I supposed to vote for that man or root for him to catch them Duke boys? And look, I know what you're thinking. Could any commercial be less relevant to a judge's qualifications for the job? I give you Greg Beard.
Search and rescue in Rapides Parish. Here's volunteer diver Greg Beard.
We have to know what we're doing. Study, train, trust our team. We do this because it helps people.
Greg Beard for Rapides Parish District Court Judge.
When times are tough, this dive team stands ready.
Of course, it makes sense. Because when I'm choosing a judge, the only thing I really care about is who can hold their breath the longest. Here's the thing. All three of the men in those ads won their elections. They're judges now, judging people. And the stupid ads are actually the least problematic. What's far more worrisome is when judges run ads like these.
Without blinking an eye, Judge Kenneth Ingram sentenced the killer to die.
Michael Oster is the only candidate for judge who has put our worst criminals on death row.
My privilege to sentence you to life in prison without parole.
Wait, it's your privilege? At best, it's your duty. There are some jobs where that kind of occupational relish is inappropriate. If you're having a colonoscopy, you don't want to hear, "It is my privilege to insert this camera deep inside your anus." The problem with an elected judiciary is sometimes the right decision is neither easy nor popular. And yet, campaigns force judges to look over their shoulder on every ruling. Because while political attack ads can be aggressive, judicial attack ads can be downright horrifying.
I was convicted of stabbing my victims with a kitchen knife.
Of shooting my ex-girlfriend and murdering her sister in front of our child.
Of sexual assault on a mom and her 10-year-old daughter. Then I slashed their throats.
On appeal, Justice Thomas Kilbride sided with us.
Over law enforcement or victims.
Oh my God. Good luck getting back into whatever you were watching after seeing that commercial. Sheldon and his friends are going to have to get into some pretty wacky mishaps to wipe the memory of that away. Now what those evil shadows are saying sounds awful, but here's the problem. None of those three men were actually set free by Judge Kilbride, but in each case he merely questioned the legality of procedural points in their trials, which is a judge's job. But there's no room in campaigns for nuance. That's why you don't see bumper stickers reading, "Justice is complicated, requiring the sublimation of our baser instincts," which, though difficult, is the only thing that separates us from the anarchy of beasts, Kilbride 2015. The danger is, though, if ads like those get inside judges' heads and make them rule more harshly to protect themselves in the future. And the problem is, that does happen.
There are some academic studies that have suggested that judges do change their behavior. So, for example, in election years, if you look at judges' sentencing decisions, judges tend to be harder on crime.
That's terrifying, because you shouldn't be sitting in a prison going, how did you get 15 months for public urination? Well, you know, it was October in an election year. I should have known what I was getting into. And it's not like appointing judges is the perfect system. We can all name one that we don't like, and it's usually Antonin Scalia. Or, in his Scalia, which is the perfect system. We can all name one that we don't like, and it's usually Antonin Scalia. Or, in his more palatable form, a bulldog dressed as Antonin Scalia. But here's the thing. Elections are inherently compromising because campaigns cost money, and that money has to come from somewhere, which leads to the horrifying spectacle of judges hitting up lawyers for donations.
For attorneys like Jules Olsman, this is the most expensive time of the year. Election season is when lawyers like him have to dig deepest into their wallets. That's because every hour or so, he'll get a call from a judge's campaign.
Spectacle of judges hitting up lawyers for donations.
Looking for a contribution.
It's very hard to say no. It's impossible to say no.
Judges asking lawyers to give them campaign money is the definition of a conflict of interest. Think about it. Giving money to judges wouldn't be acceptable in a state fair squash growing competition. Oh, really? Gladys gets first place? How much money did she give you? Because I know that knobbly pile of shit is not the nicest squash you've seen this afternoon. It looks like the Jolly Green Giant's dick fell off, and everyone here knows it, Gladys. Everyone knows it. Sometimes judges will even shake lawyers down after the election is over. Democratic Appeals Court Judge Jim Sharp sent a passive-aggressive email to a Texas attorney who had donated to his unsuccessful opponent, which said, I trust that you will see your way clear to contribute to my campaign and in an amount reflective of the $2,000 contribution you made towards my defeat. Wink emoticon. And the fact that he's shaking him down isn't even the part of that email I find most offensive. It's the wink emoticon. I guess we should all just be glad he stopped short of going full wink emoji. Incredibly, judges can even target potential future defendants, as a Philadelphia traffic court judge candidate named Willie Singletary did at a biker rally.
I'm running for traffic court judge, right? And I need some money. I'm going to tell y'all just like this. I need some money. I got some stuff I got to get to. So you all can get $20. Y'all don't need me in traffic court. Am I right about it?
Do all judges do this? Are there divorce judges going to IKEAs right now saying, look, I know some of you guys won't last. Who's got $50 for me? Cough up. Now, you'll be glad to hear that that judge is no longer on the bench, although it wasn't for taking those contributions, but rather because he allegedly once showed cell phone pictures of his genitals to a colleague, an accusation that yielded a disciplinary hearing whose magnificent opinion featured the phrase, the judicial penis, and determined he had intentionally groomed his penis for photography. Now, that's not really relevant to the story that I'm telling right now, but I think you'll agree you had to know that. You deserve to know that. And look, it gets one step worse. One step worse, judges also frequently benefit from campaign money given by businesses and special interests. And while they may claim that that doesn't affect them, multiple studies have suggested otherwise.
We looked at the Ohio Supreme Court and asked the question of how often they vote for contributors who appear before them. And the answer was, overall, about 70% of the time. And in the case of one justice, Terence O'Donnell, 91% of the time.
Now, Justice O'Donnell says that there is no connection there, but the point is, he still said, sure, why not, in response to people who gave him money 91% of the time. And the only other person who does that is Nicolas Cage. That's the only... It's been a disaster, Nicholas. It's been a romp, but it's been a disaster. And to be fair, many judges don't like this system. Even Ohio Supreme Court Justice Paul Pfeiffer has said, I never felt so much like a hooker down by the bus station in any race I've ever been in as I did in a judicial race. which does explain Pfeiffer's campaign slogan, "Justice for all, no kissing on the mouth," though I have to save something for the man I fall in love with. And increasingly, since Citizens United, PACs and super PACs are getting involved. In fact, remember the banjo ad? The one you're still humming in your head? That was sponsored by a PAC called the North Carolina Judicial Coalition, whose funders include businesses like R.J. Reynolds. And remember this one?
I was convicted of stabbing my victims with a kitchen knife.
Of shooting my ex-girlfriend and murdering her sister in front of our child.
That was sponsored by something called Just PAC, whose donors include Koch Industries, the US Chamber of Commerce, and John Deere PAC. Yes, the people who make tractors also apparently help make judicial decisions for the people of Illinois. And look, when you have a system where judges are serenaded with banjos, shake down lawyers for money, compare themselves to prostitutes, and live in constant fear of tractors, you have a problem. Because faith in a strong, independent judiciary is essential for a civilized society. Without it, we're settling disputes either in Thunderdomes or via the Purge. And I still can't work out how that thing works. Are there any rules? Are time zones a factor in the Purge? Is the East Coast Purge an hour before the Purge Central Time? In which case, nobody tweet about it, it spoils it for everyone. Look, if we're going to keep electing judges, we may have to alter our idea of what justice is. In fact, at the very least, to be a bit more representative, we should tweak the blindfolded lady holding scales to put a tip jar in her hand and give her a fucking winking emoji for her face. Infrastructure. It's our roads, bridges, dams, levees, airports, power grids, basically anything that can be destroyed in an action movie.
Get out of there!
Holy shit! If an alien species judged humanity by our most popular movies, they'd think we were furious with asphalt all the time. The problem is, though, when our infrastructure is not being destroyed by robots and or saved by Bruce Willis, we tend to find it a bit boring.
As you know, infrastructure is not a sexy or glamorous topic.
As much as I'd like to think otherwise, infrastructure is not sexy.
Infrastructure is not very sexy.
Yes, infrastructure, like those men we just heard from, is important but not sexy. Although, to be fair, that may just be because Hollywood promotes unrealistic standards of infrastructure beauty. That's not what a real road looks like. Real roads have curves. So most people think infrastructure is boring. They think it's boring, but is it? Because I'd argue that it's actually pretty fascinating. And I know that in saying that, I've basically become the rad youth counsellor trying to convince you that Jesus was the Taylor Swift of his time. Revelations is a breakup song to the Romans, guys. Who wants another Mountain Dew? Catch. So let's talk about infrastructure tonight. And let's begin with dams, because dams are amazing. They're the most powerful device we have for holding back liquid, aside from the idea of using a porta potty. I'll wait. I'll just wait forever. I cannot go in there. America used to love dams.
Grand Coulee Dam in Washington State, the world's biggest concrete structure.
Boulder Dam stands today, a modern colossus.
The walls of the new dam tower into the sky like mighty modern pyramids.
Yes, and we built those dams with ingenuity and brawn and, of course, piles and piles of dead Irish. Of course we did. They're good workers and their corpses make a solid foundation material. That's an architectural fact. But these days, America's once great dam system is in a state of serious disrepair.
The average age of the country's 84,000 dams is 52 years, and many of them have problems that stem from when they were first built.
Yes, much like most Botox recipients and competitive cloggers, the average dam is 52 years old and probably has something deeply broken inside of it. You would think a statistic like that would terrify people into action, but amazingly, many states are paying virtually no attention to their dam problems.
In 2007, the last year for which statistics are available, Texas had just 7 inspectors responsible for 7,400 dams. That's over 1,050 dams per inspector. The state was only able to look at 239 dams. Alabama doesn't even have an inspection agency to monitor its 2,000-plus dams.
0 inspectors. That means that the state of Alabama has exactly the same number of dam inspectors as the band Alabama. And it's not just dams. We're currently doing a terrible job of maintaining all of our infrastructure.
The nation's infrastructure of bridges, roads, and pipelines is sorely in need of renovation.
Collectively, they get nothing more than a D+.
A D+. Think about that. America got the same grade that a 10th grade teacher gives a nightmare kid so she doesn't have to deal with him for another year. No, Landon, we're not calculating the surface area of our penises. Just give him a D+ and say he has family troubles. I cannot even deal with that shit again. And look, to be fair, that D+ grade came from the American Society of Civil Engineers, who would clearly benefit from more infrastructure spending. So it's a bit like having the state of our nation's tennis ball assessed by the American Society of Golden Retrievers. They're dangerously underthrown. This must change. We've been such good dogs. Such good dogs. But other studies have also found our infrastructure is lacking. The World Economic Forum ranks America 16th in the world, and we need to be better. Because when infrastructure fails, bad things happen. Like last year when a pipe burst and flooded the campus of UCLA.
A water main break in West Los Angeles turned the UCLA campus into a river. Students walked through ankle-deep water, or in some cases, tried to have fun with the situation.
I've been chilling here for like 20 minutes trying to get the best view. Yeah, I just came from the gym. I got kicked out, you know, because of the flood, so.
It looked insane. Like, there's so much water.
It's like, I've never seen so much water. Except for, like, lakes, I guess. And when infrastructure is damaged, it's not just incredibly expensive. It can also be lethal. From the big stuff, like bridge collapses and dam failures, to the little stuff, like potholes.
Gone at 53 years old, Al Lee slammed his bike into a pothole riding along Grizzly Peak Boulevard in Oakland. His wife, Nancy, says a car then hit him head-on.
Roadways need to be paved. That's why we have infrastructure. That's why we pay our taxes.
And that's horrifying. But the problem is, we only ever seem to talk about infrastructure when something tragic like that happens. And the scale of this problem is scary, as the former Secretary of Transportation points out.
According to the government, there's 70,000 bridges that have been deemed structurally deficient.
Yep.
What does that mean?
It means that they're bridges that need to be really either replaced or repaired in a very dramatic way.
They're dangerous.
I don't want to say they're unsafe, but they're dangerous.
What? Hold on. When we're at a point where the Secretary of Transportation is struggling to decide between using the word unsafe and the word dangerous, we might have a problem worth fixing. And if you want a glimpse into how close to catastrophe we occasionally are, take this story from Philadelphia.
In 2008, 2 contractors from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation stopped to get a sausage sandwich and parked their cars under this bridge.
Unfortunately, they wanted that sausage sandwich because they saw one of these piers with an 8-foot gash in it, about 5 inches wide.
And if they hadn't wanted a sausage sandwich?
There's a strong likelihood that bridge would have collapsed.
So there might have been a disaster if those Philly contractors hadn't wanted to stop for a sausage sandwich, which means we were fine, we were always going to be fine. But the scary thing is, what if the next crack pillar in Philadelphia is next to a vegan smoothie stand? The bridge is going down and people are going to die. And it's not just Philadelphia. Look at Pittsburgh, the city of bridges, and its solution to one that was dangerously deteriorating.
One of these arch bridges actually has a structure built under it to catch falling deck. See that structure underneath it? They actually built that to catch any of the falling concrete so it wouldn't hit traffic underneath it.
They built a bridge under the bridge. That is a college sophomore approach to structural engineering. Yeah, the trash was overflowing, so I just started putting it in the microwave. Problem solved. I'm a legend. And there are dangerous bridges everywhere. Here in New York, the Tappan Zee Bridge is so notoriously shaky, one government official in charge of fixing it called it a hold-your-breath bridge. And the only time we should ever talk about hold-your-breath bridges would be if, for some reason, Beau Bridges were into autoerotic asphyxiation and you were trying to remember which one he was. Is he the normal Bridges or is he the hold-your-breath Bridges? It's important that I know this. The facts about the Tappan Zee Bridge are frightening enough, and yet the History Channel felt the need to produce a terrifyingly CGI-filled account of the worst-case scenario.
Some of the Tappan Zee's foundations are at risk, and this is what could happen if they eventually gave way.
Okay. One, that's very frightening. But two, why did the director assume we'd all had such a strong emotional attachment to the coffee cup? A fucking bridge just collapsed. Look, at this point, we aren't just flirting with disaster. We're rounding third base and asking if disaster has any condoms. And the crazy thing is, ask any politician from either side and they'll tell you that infrastructure is incredibly important. Everyone agrees on this. In fact, at a recent hearing, both business and Labour, in the form of the US Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO, turned out to support infrastructure spending. And even they know how rare that is.
If business and labor can come before you united on this issue, and we are united on this issue, despite our sharp disagreements on a variety of other matters, I think that should tell everybody something, and tell them very loudly.
He's right. The last time business and Labour agreed on an issue, it was the issue of how dead should Jimmy Hoffa xenophoby. They both agreed, pretty dead. Here's how obvious our need is. Just 2 days ago, even a total idiot agreed.
We have to rebuild our infrastructure. Our roads are crumbling, everything's crumbling, and we're rebuilding China.
Okay, now, glossing over whatever the f*** he was talking about regarding rebuilding China, that upside-down piece of candy corn in a wig made of used medical gauze is right. We do have to rebuild our infrastructure. So, with consensus like this, how are things so bad? Well, one of the problems is just fixing things is not politically appealing. Because when you build something new, you get to do this.
2, 3!
There is nothing politicians like more than using oversized scissors to cut through ribbons. But you don't get to cut a ribbon after routine repairs. Infrastructure is like Legos. Building is fun, destroying is fun, but a Lego maintenance set would be the most boring fucking toy in the world. Oh, it comes built and then you maintain it, and if you do it right, nothing happens and eventually you die. Have fun, son. Perhaps the best symbol for our neglected infrastructure is the US Highway Trust Fund. It is the single largest source of infrastructure funding in this country. And guess what's about to happen to it?
There's a May 31st deadline. This year, the Highway Trust Fund goes bankrupt unless Congress acts.
Yeah, the fund is about to run out of money. And unlike most broke trust fund recipients, our highway system can't just get a job at its daddy's law firm. Oh, really, Declan? What case are you working on? And does it contain 24 Miller Lights? I hate you, Declan. The reason the fund is nearly insolvent is that it's primarily funded by the federal gas tax, and there's just one hitch with that.
The Highway Trust Fund gets revenue from an 18.4 cent per gallon gas tax, but the tax has not increased to keep up with inflation since 1993.
And the fact that it hasn't increased means that in real terms the gas tax has gone down 39% since 1993, much like kooshball sales or respect for Bill Cosby. I'd like to think it was more than that, but sadly I don't think it is, actually. You would think that Congress would fix this shortfall, but we haven't had long-term transportation legislation for over a decade. In fact, since 2003, it's barely passed 2 partial authorizations and 23 short-term extensions, one of which, in July 2005, was for just 2 days. 2 days! That entire extension lasted half a Sting orgasm. That's not enough. So you might think, why doesn't Washington just raise the gas tax and fund the fund? Well, because that would be incredibly unpopular. Listen to what happened when C-SPAN had a call-in and asked people whether or not the gas tax should be raised.
I don't know that another gas tax is going to help us out.
Okay.
No, they shouldn't raise the gas tax.
Okay.
The last thing we need is new taxes.
Okay.
If gas prices go back up, we'll be stuck with super high prices.
Okay.
The government has plenty of money. What I want to say is no.
War on coal, war on gasoline, war on diesel.
I agree with all of the other previous callers. Hello?
Okay.
Okay. That call-in lasted for nearly an hour and they did not receive a single call in favour of the gas tax. You would think they'd at least have been prank calls by Mikey and the Badger, DC's #1 morning zoo crew. Hi, I'd just like to say we should definitely raise the gas tax. You've been badgered!
Badger!
In the face of that kind of overwhelming lack of public support, it is hardly surprising that the White House is not too keen on it either.
The administration has not put forward and does not plan to put forward a proposal to increase the gas tax.
OK, so it seems raising the gas tax is unlikely, which is fine as long as you have another concrete way to raise that money. So, what is the White House's plan?
This administration has put forward an idea by essentially closing a loophole that allows corporations to benefit from stashing some of their profits overseas.
Okay. Raise funds by closing corporate loopholes. I think we all know that is guaranteed to work. The only obstacle would be, and I know that this is highly unlikely, if there were another corporate loophole somewhere else in the tax code. Oh, and there is one other obstacle. When the president floated this plan by John Boehner a year ago, he swatted it aside, perhaps because Boehner favours his own plan, which he's been talking up for the past 2 years.
I'm committed to working to find a funding source so that we can begin to repair America's aging infrastructure. The hunt has been underway for the last year and a half to find that funding source. I wish I could report to you we found it, but we haven't. We've got to find a way to deal with America's crumbling infrastructure, and we need to do it in a long-term program that is in fact funded.
2 years and nothing. That's an oddly laid-back way to tackle a potentially catastrophic problem. Because if a giant lizard were attacking our roads and bridges, you wouldn't spend 2 years saying, yes, I am committed to preventing marauding lizards destroying our city, but we need to do it in a long-term program that is, in fact, funded. I refuse to believe that after all this time, Boehner does not have some sort of plan. We actually emailed his office earlier this week and asked, what is Speaker Boehner's proposal to raise revenue for the US Highway Trust Fund? We didn't hear back, so we emailed someone else in the office. Still nothing. So we called the office. Still nothing. At this point, we were getting desperate, so we sent him this tweet asking, Mr. Speaker, how specifically will you raise revenue for the US Highway Trust Fund? Hashtag Happy Birthday Justin Bieber. Just to make sure that he would see it for definite. Then, still nothing. Then we found out that he's on Vine for some reason, because apparently he's 14 in 2013. So we sent him this. Mr. Speaker, how specifically would you raise revenue for the US Highway Trust Fund? Is that 6 seconds? It feels like it'd be a lot longer than that. Still nothing. He still didn't get back to us. Look, the lack of political urgency in tackling this problem is insane. And you cannot tell me that you are not interested in this, because every summer, people flock to see our infrastructure threatened by terrorists or aliens. But we should care just as much when it's under threat from the inevitable passage of time. The problem is, no one has made a blockbuster movie about the importance of routine maintenance and repair. Or they hadn't. Until now.
In a world where a few feet of concrete can mean the difference between life and death, where everything you love can be taken from you in the blink of an eye, a few brave souls are willing to risk everything to make nothing happen.
Hello?
It's time.
Excuse me?
For your biennial bridge inspection.
I've got Thursday afternoon or Friday anytime before 3.
This summer, get ready for infrastructure. Brace yourself for 98 heart-pounding minutes of incremental maintenance.
I'm not showing any cracking, no delamination, no spalls on the concrete deck, but you got mild corrosion on the beams. You're gonna have to keep an eye on that. Thank you, sir. Don't get cocky.
The New York Times calls infrastructure necessary and something I never thought about, but yeah, sure.
Jesus, Scott, Bobby, behind you. Seepage. This thing is going to blow. 15 or 20 years, which is why it's so important that we caught it early.
In this line of work, one mistake could be catastrophic.
It's loose, boss. The bolt is loose.
Well, then tighten it, goddammit.
I don't know which way.
Okay, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. Talk to me, what's going on?
It's good.
Rolling Stone says nothing happens, and that's probably for the best.
I came here to chew bubblegum and inspect bridges.
You want to see terrible puns about engineering you don't fully understand?
Looks like somebody needs to get their ducks in a row.
You want to see 20-minute monologues on the structural integrity of girders?
I'm ordering uniaxial tests of the slab transverse to the deck corrugations with additional reinforcement and tension tests of the support fastener connections between the deck and the girders. Bitch.
You want more thrilling routine maintenance than you can handle?
They used PVC piping when they should have used CPVC piping. God help us.
You want to see
Use CPVC piping.
you can handle?
They used PVC piping when they should have used CPVC piping. God help us.
You want to see Infrastructure. Featuring an all-star cast, plus two-time Academy Award nominee Edward Norton. Sorry, three-time Academy Award nominee Edward Norton. And introducing, as the Chief, Steve Buscemi.
I'm the best dam inspector in the business. And I'm here to inspect this dam.
Coming summer 2015. Infrastructure. If anything exciting happens, we've done it wrong.
Sausage sandwich?
Of course.
Our main story tonight is the threat of nuclear annihilation. It's probably been a while since you thought about it, but there was a time when people lived in almost constant fear. Children used to be shown this in schools.
Sundays, holidays, vacation time, we must be ready every day, all the time, to do the right thing if the atomic bomb explodes. Duck and cover.
I'll say this for the 1950s. They had the perfect blend of optimism and pessimism. The death blast is coming, but we'll survive it if we all get under this picnic blanket. Now, by the 1980s, attitudes had changed. The TV movie The Day After had a slightly different tone. See if you can spot it. The worst thing is, Danny would have been fine if he just had a picnic blanket with him. What were you thinking, you little fool? The strange thing is, all of that seems so dated. Nowadays, we spend less time worrying about nuclear annihilation than we do worrying about whether we accidentally hit reply all on an office email. Oh, shit, did I send that to Dave? I said his face looks like a ferret. But maybe we should be worrying about nuclear warheads a bit more. And not the ones in North Korea, Iran or Russia, but the ones we have here at home. America has around 4,800 nuclear warheads, which is more than enough, not just to destroy Earth, but to provide 4th of July fireworks for Martians. Some of our most powerful weapons are intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, which is both an acronym and what you would say if you saw one coming at you. That's a little joke for all you gastroenterologists out there. They are currently in silos in Wyoming, Montana and North Dakota. And let's start with Wyoming. How well are we taking care of these things?
Take this enormous outer door designed to protect the corridor leading to the capsule. They can't close it because of a broken part, so it's propped open with a crowbar and marked with a danger tag.
Okay. To be honest, repairs like that are less appropriate in a nuclear silo than they are in a divorced dad's condo. Why does the fridge open with string, Daddy? And for the record, it's not just their hardware that needs updating, it's their software too.
The equipment is ancient. This, for example, is one of the computers that would receive a launch order from the president. It uses floppy disks, the really old, big ones.
Holy shit! Those things barely look powerful enough to run Oregon Trail. Much less Earth-ending weaponry. People who work there must watch war games and go, one day we'll get to play with that stuff. Look, fingers crossed things are a little better in North Dakota.
17 Air Force officers are being relieved of their duties controlling nuclear missiles.
An inspection in March tested the group's missile launch proficiency. They were rated as marginal, the equivalent of earning a D grade, barely passing.
That's not great. I do really think when it comes to safeguarding the deadliest objects ever known to mankind, we should really insist on something more in a solid B+, C- range. OK, finally, let's look at Montana. The good news, their officers have not had D grades. The bad news is why.
34 U.S. Air Force nuclear launch officers have been stripped of their certification.
4 months ago, a launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana allegedly texted the answers to a monthly proficiency test to other officers at the base.
They texted the answers? Those answers should not be textable. You should not be able to answer, how do you prevent the launch of a Minuteman III with emojis? It has to be more complicated than that. But OK, look, let's not overreact. You know, not everyone is good at tests. How are the people in North Dakota and Montana working in the field?
Picture this: 4 Air Force officers who hold the launch keys to nuclear missiles, leaving open the blast door that's supposed to prevent terrorists from entering the capsule. This while another slept inside, which is allowed only if the door is closed. And who discovered this? In one case, it was a maintenance team. In another case, it was discovered by someone delivering food.
And once again, America is saved from destruction by the heroes in Meal Team 6. And in case you think it's just low-level, unmotivated officers who are dropping the ball here, let's meet 2 of the top people who've been in charge of our most powerful missiles. First up, Major General Michael Carey. He was relieved of command last October for spectacular reasons.
According to an Air Force Inspector General's report, on a recent trip to Russia, Air Force General Michael Carey was often intoxicated, rude, and spent a lot of time with foreign women.
He often interrupted presentations. He often interrupted translators with annoying comments when he gave toasts, and that really irritated the Russians.
Just think about that. The man overseeing our ICBMs was too drunk for the Russians. For the Russians. And CNN barely skimmed the surface of this story. The Inspector General's report reads like Ron Burgundy Goes to Russia. Apparently, General Carey at one point tried to fist bump a confused Russian tour guide, then dragged his staff to a restaurant called La Cantina because he, and I quote, really wanted to see this Beatles cover band, prompting one staffer to observe, I wouldn't pick a Mexican place to go in Russia, but all right, if that's where he wants to go, we'll go there. And even once he was there, it wasn't over, because he, again, I quote, was really intent on singing with the band, and he said, go ask them if I can play guitar. Which led to the immortal sentence, I told the general that basically, you know, that he can't play the guitars. Take a moment to consider the run of poor decisions that are required before you're being told you can't play guitar with a Beatles cover band when you're drunk at a Mexican restaurant in Russia. Just add all that up together and then consider this man had access to our deadliest nuclear warheads. And in case that doesn't scare you enough, until recently, one of the men overseeing all the people we've met so far was Vice Admiral Tim Giardina. The president relieved him of his command last year for an even weirder reason.
Admiral Timothy Giardina's undoing began with a local criminal investigation in Iowa, where he was spotted on surveillance cameras using counterfeit poker chips at the Horseshoe Casino in Council Bluffs.
Okay, I'm sorry, but a vice admiral has to have the mental fortitude to fool an Iowa pit boss. You have to. You have to. And also, this means, let's recap, that within the last 12 months, we were in a situation where, in the event of us launching a nuclear strike, the president's command would theoretically have gone through a man gambling with fake poker chips, who would have then tried to call a drunk guy wrestling with a Russian George Harrison, who would have then needed to send someone with a bag full of burritos to wake up an officer and tell him to go grab an LP-sized floppy disk and begin the solemn process of ending the world as we know it. Just... And if you're thinking, well, it looks like we were lucky nothing terrible has happened, we're actually even luckier than you think. Over the years, America has had some pretty terrifying almost-geddons.
The Goldsboro incident of 1961. That's when a U.S. B-52 bomber jet broke in half during a flight and lost its load, 2 nuclear bombs. Where was it flying at the time? Over the city of Goldsboro, North Carolina. Both bombs plummeted to the ground. One was nearly armed, set to explode, but miraculously, neither did.
Yep. You dropped an armed nuclear bomb on your own country. And it is frankly amazing that you don't talk about that more often. There is genuinely a weirdly restrained sign marking the event, calling it a nuclear mishap, when it clearly should really say, holy f***, you have no idea what nearly happened here. And I know you're probably thinking, OK, all right, we nearly blew up one of the Carolinas, but that's basically why we have 2. But in that case, how about that one time we risked blowing up Arkansas?
Someone dropped a socket in the silo, and the socket fell about 70 feet, pierced the missile, caused a fuel leak, and then there was a huge explosion.
Just think about the system we have designed. In the rock, paper, scissors logic, socket beats nuclear missile. And if that feels too much like ancient history to you, here is something from as recently as 2007.
6 nuclear-tipped cruise missiles were loaded onto a B-52 by mistake, flown across the country, and left unguarded on the tarmac. No one noticed for 36 hours.
And that must have been a hell of a moment when they realised, hey, guys, those things that have been out there for a day and a half, there is no way that those are nuclear shit! It seems clear. At this point, we have too many nuclear weapons to take care of them properly. So, why aren't we reducing them? Well, we were, to be fair. Since 1988, we got rid of more than 18,000 warheads. But recently, things have slowed down a lot. President Obama has reduced our arsenal by just 309, which is crazy. At a time of budgetary cutbacks, just warheads. But recently, things have slowed down a lot. President Obama has reduced our arsenal by just 309, which is crazy. At a time of budgetary cutbacks, we are spending $355 billion over the next decade on something we don't need. And don't take that from me. Take it from someone who actually knows something about this.
The one thing I convinced myself of after all these years of exposure to the use of nuclear weapons is that they were useless.
Yeah. Nuclear weapons are basically like Americans' T-Rex arms. They're essentially useless, and you are plenty scary enough without them. When you have 4,800 of something you don't need, you are a f***ing hoarder at that point. It's like having 4,800 cats. Sure, each one might have made sense when you got it. But it all happened so gradually, you didn't really notice that things had gotten out of hand. And now you have too many of these agents of chaos and destruction, and one of these days, one of them might kill you. The problem is, there are 2 key things stopping us from reducing our nuclear weapons. The first is politics, because there are lawmakers from both parties who have missile silos in their states. And they will fight any attempt to close them, no matter how much sense that makes. And they'll fight it with ironclad logic like this.
We know that maintaining our current silos is the best interest, and in the best interest, of taxpayers, because rebuilding them would be very expensive.
OK, let me get that straight. You are spending money on something you don't need in the hopes that you'll be saving money on the off chance one day you eventually do. What exactly are you saying there? That's desperate. That's like saying, I have to hold on to my storage facility full of Aquaman action figures on the off chance that my future wife really likes them. She will not. She will not. She will not want those things. You don't need them. The man there, that's Steve Daines, and the House was discussing a bill that guaranteed that silos would be kept open until at least 2021. He was trying to attach an amendment removing the end date altogether, essentially meaning no matter what the Pentagon wanted, the silos would have to be kept open forever. It was clearly a ridiculous amendment. Let's now watch it pass.
On this vote, the yeas are 222, the nays are 196. The amendment is adopted.
That is some weapons-grade bullshit. Now, the Senate could still make big changes to that bill, but for that to happen, people would need to care. And that brings us to the main reason why so little is being done to reduce our number of nuclear warheads. Deep down, people just don't give enough of a shit anymore. In the 1980s, hundreds of thousands of people pushed for disarmament in Central Park. But in May of this year, this is what a House hearing on nuclear security looked like.
We should point out probably one of the few hearings in which actually the attendance of the subcommittee compares very favorably with the attendance in the audience, because the public has not tuned into these issues as they should.
That's right. A hearing on the most dangerous things on Earth had attendance rivaling that of a weekday open mic poetry slam. And the problem is, no one honestly believes that we're going to destroy ourselves, despite the fact that that has nearly happened multiple times. But shouldn't we, at the very least, be reducing our stockpile down to a number where we can look after them properly, with enough qualified people, none of whom are going to cheat on a test, leave a door open, or vomit a half-eaten chimichanga onto a Slavic Ringo? All I'm saying is, if humanity is going to be destroyed by a nuclear weapon, let's make sure that it's at least intentional. Let's have it be a US president riding a missile with a middle finger held to the sky, screaming humanity's last words, "F you, world, America is shutting this shit down." Please, let's just not have our last words be, "Oops, oh shit." Drones. They're the third most annoying thing in the sky after mosquitoes and plastic bags caught in the breeze. They are not gorgeous, weird kid from American Beauty. They're trash and they kill sea turtles. You got turtle blood on your hands. But all of a sudden, drones are everywhere. We even use them to shoot romantic wedding videos. And what could possibly go wrong with that? Our main story this week is Scotland. Americans know it as the birthplace of Shrek and that accent you think you can do but actually can't. Well, this coming Thursday, Scotland is facing a major decision.
Scotland will vote this week on whether to leave the United Kingdom.
For the first time in modern history, London could be at risk of losing control of Scotland. It could become its own country.
Yes, it seems like England may lose yet another country. And look, I'm not saying the sun is setting on the British Empire. Let's just say the restaurant of history is switching to its dinner menu. Now, there is a lot to explain here, especially because when most American people think about Scottish independence, they tend to picture this.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Oh, yes, nothing screams Scottish freedom quite like a millionaire Australian anti-Semite on horseback. So let me bring you up to date here. Scotland is currently a member of the United Kingdom, which is not a country. It's actually a complicated political and economic union. Think of it as an archipelagic supergroup comprised of 4 variously willing members. And to understand why Scotland may want to leave, you really need to understand the history of its relationship with England.
For centuries, England and Scotland remained separate and frequently at war. But in 1707 they formed a single country, Great Britain, a decision that's been controversial in Scotland ever since.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's still controversial. Given that, as you can see here, we are still role-playing with wooden swords to try and emotionally work through it. So Scotland and England have been involved in something of a 300-year arranged marriage. And look, I will be the first one to acknowledge England has been a little bit of a dick since the honeymoon. In 1746, we actually banned the kilt just because we knew they liked it. And then we chose God Save the King as the UK's national anthem, a song which at one point had a verse referencing rebellious Scots to crush. Although to be fair, we later realised that was wrong and replaced it with a line about pissing on the Welsh. But 2.5 years ago, it was announced that Scotland would finally get to vote on its independence. And since then, there has been a spirited campaign.
There are 2 campaigns. Yes, Scotland, backed by the SNP and the Scottish Greens, and Better Together.
OK, for a start, Better Together is not a great name for a campaign. It sounds like what people say to convince themselves to stay in a dead marriage. Look, I'm not saying we're good together, Marion, I'm saying we're better together. Tax-wise, it's preferable to the alternative. Why are you crying, Marion? I'm saying something nice. And if you think their name is uninspiring, wait until you hear their slogan.
No thanks. No thanks.
No thanks.
No thanks.
No thanks is a violently British way to refuse something. That is just one step away from, oh, I couldn't possibly. But what's even more interesting here is who is helping fund these 2 campaigns.
Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling wants Scotland to stay part of the UK. Rowling has donated $1.6 million to the Better Together campaign.
Yeah, but that's not really a surprise, is it? She famously wrote a book where a redhead played second fiddle to a magical Englishman. Come along, Ron, come along. I shall have all the powers and your brothers can die fighting my wars. Come along, come along. Meanwhile, the opposing side has received 80% of its funding from these 2 people.
Jackpot. A Scottish couple scoop £161 million on the lottery, making them Europe's biggest ever winners.
That's right. The pro-independence campaign is predominantly financed by lottery winners. They're like an adorable Scottish version of the Koch brothers. So let's just look at the 2 arguments. First, the case in favour of Scottish independence.
We can take matters into Scottish hands. No one, absolutely no one, will run the affairs of this country better than the people who live and work in Scotland.
And to be fair, he might be right about that. Scots know how to run a country. Because when they got to choose a national animal, they selected, and I swear this is true, a unicorn. Who knew you were allowed to do that? Pick a fictional animal. Yeah. America's probably kicking itself for choosing the bald eagle now, aren't you? You could have picked a Wookiee in a top hat, or whatever the Grimace is. Look. He looks like a magic genie granted a wish to Gorbachev's birthmark. But... And also, for their national flower, the Scots chose a thistle. That is a plant made out of tiny knives and a throwing star. The only flower I like is a flower that could pierce an Englishman's throat. And look, there are legitimate reasons for Scotland to want to govern itself. For instance, it's a predominantly liberal country which has frequently been governed by a conservative UK government. And seldom has that divide been more pronounced than right now, when the UK's Prime Minister is David Cameron.
Cameron's problem is that as a posh southern Tory, he's seen in Scotland as the personification of everything that's wrong with England and the UK.
Yeah, I agree with that. He embodies all the things I hate most about England, and I'm English. Let me prove this to you. This is a picture of him as a student at Oxford. He's in fucking tails. Now, Cameron says he's desperately embarrassed by that photo, which is why it pains me so much to be showing it to you. Can we get a close-up on his face? Because that is the face of a man who fast-forwards through the servant parts of Downton Abbey. Just... Who cares what's happening downstairs? Let's just hope the soup doesn't get cold. In fact, let me show you what an arsehole David Cameron is. One of the biggest issues in the independence debate concerns the fact that Scotland has a surprisingly large amount of oil. But watch how David Cameron responded to a simple parliamentary question about who should control revenues from it.
A poll last week showed that 68% of Scots want oil revenues devolved to Scotland. Does the Prime Minister agree with 68% of Scots, or does he not?
If you ask a stupid question, you get a stupid answer, I think.
Imagine that sound for 300 years, and it gives you some sense of why Scotland may be ready to leave. OK, so let's look at the anti-independence campaign now. Clearly, they had some serious work to do. Unfortunately, their attempts to win hearts and minds involved this controversial commercial targeted at women, featuring a Scottish mother confused by the whole concept of independence, who has just sent her kids off to school.
Best time of the day, this. When they're all out, nice and quiet. Gives you time to think. Helps you clear your head. Shame it only lasts for 2 minutes. Don't get me wrong. I know how important this vote is. There's not much time left for me to make a decision. But there's only so many hours in the day.
Oh, it's so confusing. It hurts my wee head. I'm just a woman, you know, just a pair of ovaries and some bangs. How do I possibly have the mental capacity to pick from one of 2 options? Put me down for a no and never trust me with an important decision again. What's crazy about this? The crazy thing about this is that the anti-independence side actually has some legitimate arguments to make. Leaving the UK could potentially have some serious consequences for Scotland.
If they vote for independence, Scots have been warned that they risk losing the pound as their currency.
Yeah, they could lose the pound, and that's not nothing. Because if they do, they'd either have to join the currently unstable euro or revert to Scotland's old currency, which I believe was sheep and threats. I'll give you 3 sheep for it and a punch in the face. Do we have a f***ing deal? Why do they hate us? And also, while the pro-independence campaign has put a great deal of emphasis on Scotland's oil, there are genuine concerns over how much might actually be left.
Reserves are dwindling. The Office for Budget Responsibility expects the number of barrels produced to decline from 2 million a day in 2012 to just 500,000 in 2040.
And if that's true, that might be a problem. Because if you've ever been there, you will know that solar power is not an option for Scotland. So those are the 2 sides, and with the vote just days away, this thing is set to go down to the wire.
This morning, in shock, Brits woke up to headlines like these. Don't let me be the last Queen of Scotland. Last stand to keep the Union. A new poll for the UK Sunday Times newspaper shows 51% of Scots plan to vote yes for independence.
And if it comes down to just 1 vote, we all know who will be called upon to break that tie. Go with your gut, Nessie. You do you, Nessie. You do you. It seems like there is a real chance that Scotland may leave. And if they do, just so you know, there are going to be some significant consequences for everybody.
They might also have to say cheerio to something more symbolic, the beloved Union Jack. You see, the current flag, which hasn't changed in over 200 years, is a mix between England's Cross of St. George, Scotland's Cross of St. Andrew, and Ireland's Cross of St. Patrick.
The government could ditch the blue and white cross of St. Andrews for something that looks like this.
Oh, great. Great. Well, there goes my fucking bedspread, my shower curtain, my wallpaper, and my dog. Unbelievable. We can't do it. But it is not just flags that are a cause for concern. There is also the small matter of this.
The Scottish National Party wants to get rid of the nuclear weapons that are currently based in Scotland and shift them back to England, and that would be a huge problem for the United Kingdom.
Yeah, that would also be a huge problem for everybody, because we have nowhere to keep them right now. I mean, I guess we could disguise them as Buckingham Palace guards, but people are going to notice that after a while. And Scotland wants those weapons gone. Their leaders have described them as, and I quote, an affront to basic decency. And this is coming from the land of the haggis, a boiled sheep stomach stuffed with organ meat. It is no wonder the British government is suddenly panicking. They are scrambling to make nice with Scotland, but here's the problem. When you haven't been nice to someone for 1,000 years... Our main story this week is Scotland. Americans know it as the birthplace of Shrek, and that accent you think... This.
The Scottish National Party wants to get rid of the nuclear...
Scotland wants... those weapons gone. Their leaders have described them as, and I quote, an affront to basic decency. And this is coming from the land of the haggis, a boiled sheep stomach stuffed with organ meat. It is no wonder the British government is suddenly panicking. They are scrambling to make nice with Scotland, but here's the problem. When you haven't been nice to someone for 1,000 years, it's very difficult to suddenly start. For instance, last week, they tried raising the Scottish flag over 10 Downing Street. Watch how that went.
On the roof of Downing Street, on the orders of the Prime Minister no less, a moment of high symbolism. Oh dear, and it's not as though everything was going swimmingly before.
That's right. Not even English flagpoles can suddenly start treating Scotland with the respect it deserves. Get this rag off me. Get it off. I can't. Get this blue mess off me. And in a last-ditch effort, David Cameron has even tried, like a romantic hero, to turn up at Scotland's door and plead for them not to leave.
I would be heartbroken if this family of nations that we've put together and that we've done such amazing things together, if this family of nations was torn apart.
That's it? That's the best pleading you've got? There are only 4 days left. Look, if I've learned one thing from the last 4 minutes of British romantic comedies, it's that if you're trying to win someone over, you need a big romantic gesture. A kiss in the rain, a kiss in the snow, turning up to someone's door with romantic signs expressing your love for them because you can't say it out loud because her husband, your best friend, is in the next room, which is a bit f***ed up. But it is effective. It's effective, so with that in mind, let's do this. Because right now, Scotland, I'm just a boy, standing in front of a nation, asking it to continue tolerating me. You want me to show you what I'm willing to do to save this relationship? Here, I will eat some haggis. Look, I'll do it. Oh, yeah. Sheep lungs. There are literally sheep lungs in my mouth. Let me just wash that down with some fine Scottish whiskey. Oh, it tastes like a delicious house fire. Look at me, Scotland. I'm drunk on scotch. I'm trying to choke back sheep lung vomit. So kiss me, Scotland. What do you mean this isn't enough? Look, here's your national animal. I'll even pretend it exists. There it is. Hello, unicorn. Hello. And if that's not enough, I'll make the ultimate sacrifice. Oh, yes, that's right. I will feign enjoyment of bagpipe music. The atonal death squeal of your people. I believe this particular song is called Cat Bronchitis in A minor, and I love it. In fact, there's just one problem. It's simply not loud enough. Our main story tonight concerns the past week's terrible events in Missouri.
An officer shot an 18-year-old man outside an apartment complex in Ferguson, Missouri.
It is unclear at this hour what led to the shooting, but witnesses say the teenager was unarmed.
Angry confrontations between protesters and police in riot gear. The same anger and outrage that exploded into a chaotic night of looting and violence.
This whole story is depressingly familiar, and there are so many unanswered questions regarding why an officer would shoot an unarmed teenager. What is absolutely clear is that the police have handled everything since then terribly, and the tone deafness began with this.
Asked how many times Brown was shot, St. Louis County Police Chief John Belmar said,
"It was more than just a couple, but I don't think it was many more than that."
Just think about what he's saying there. Not much more than twice. Could you try and minimise this anymore? Look, listen, everyone. Only very many more than one bullet was fired, so everybody calm down, shall we? The police then refused for days to release the name of the officer. Involved, and when they eventually did, they packaged it with a DVD extra that no one wanted.
At the same time, they released video of Michael Brown allegedly carrying out a store robbery minutes before he was shot and killed, and that has sparked new outrage.
Yeah, of course it has, because it's irrelevant. If the police wanted to distract everyone with a video that has absolutely nothing to do with Michael Brown's shooting, they should have just released Ghostbusters instead. It's exactly as relevant to everything that happened afterwards. But the more the week went on, the more you got the sense that those in charge in Ferguson don't have the best sense of how their community feels. Just listen to the mayor.
We've never seen this kind of violence. We've never seen this kind of frustration or tension between the races. I've always been proud to say that to people. I know we've always gotten along, and I know our community still gets along very well.
Oh, we're absolutely famous for it. Presumably, that is why I, the mayor of Ferguson, am currently on national f***ing television. Presumably, we're talking about how well our town is getting along right now, and always has. The thing is, if you ask around in Ferguson, you get a slightly different story.
The cops harassment is frequently. It's all through the day, it's all through the night. Then they not beating us physically, they doing it verbally.
Here's the thing the mayor doesn't understand. As a general rule, no one should ever be allowed to say there is no history of racial tension here, because that sentence has never been true anywhere on Earth. Even in Antarctica. Even in Antarctica, there is tension between emperor penguins and Gen 2 penguins. F*** you, Gen 2 penguins, flapping over here, stealing our fish. Not you, chin-strap penguins, you're cool. You guys are good at math. So, which one of these two men is right about what life as a young African-American in Ferguson is like? Well, to answer that, let's look at the police force. What does it look like in a town which is about 2/3 African-American?
What is the makeup of your police force, the number, and how many of them are white? I just want clarification of that.
I mean, they keep saying three are African American, but I actually believe it's 5. There was 6, but 1 left fairly recently. We also have a Hispanic and 2 Asian Pacific Islanders.
Exactly. Look, it doesn't stop there, guys. We got a couple of white guys who occasionally listen to hip-hop music. I mean, Macklemore, sure, but still. Also, we have 6 Norwegian Americans who really enjoyed The Lion King on Broadway. So it's it's more diverse than it seems. But despite the presence of both of the Pacific Islanders and, of course, the Hispanic, let's not forget him, the Ferguson police do seem to target minorities.
86% of police stops are African Americans, 92% of police searches, nearly 93% of arrests.
Even though they stopped more blacks, more whites had contraband.
Yeah, of course more whites had contraband. They knew that if you look like this, you don't get stopped. If you are white in Ferguson, you would need to be snorting cocaine directly off your dashboard to get stopped by the police. Whereas, if you're an African-American in Ferguson, like, say, Henry Davis here, you may have a slightly different experience. Because while in custody in the Ferguson jail in 2009, officers grabbed him and pushed him and struck him multiple times. They say they were provoked, although, oddly, there is no video of this incident, despite the fact the jail is equipped with video cameras. And what is known, though, at this point, is that he was later charged with 4 counts of destruction of city property for bleeding on their uniforms. And I've got to say, he was lucky that he wasn't eating spaghetti at the time of his beating, or they would have upgraded that charge to a felony. And that is just the local police. The county police also have had their share of problems.
A St. Louis County police lieutenant is without a job tonight. He was fired for allegedly ordering patrol officers to arrest black people shopping in South County.
Oh, it wasn't just that he ordered racial profiling. It was how he allegedly did it, with his colleagues claiming that he said things like, "Let's have a black day," and "Let's make the jail cells more colourful." Now, let's be fair here. "Let's have a black day" is an awesome thing to say if you are Shaft. And "Let's make the jail cells more colourful" is entirely appropriate if you're an interior designer with a folder full of paint swatches. However, if you're a white police officer, it's not ideal to say either of those, which is not to say that all cops are bad. They are clearly not. Also, the people of Ferguson want and need an effective police force. But perhaps their relationship was best summed up by this photo from earlier this week. Not just ludicrously aggressive police facing off against an unarmed man, but also the fact that someone has clearly written "F*** the police" on the postbox. Something that apparently CNN did not notice when they were using this photo during all of their coverage. So, they didn't see it. Now, you might also notice in that photo that the police are troublingly dressed like they're about to launch an assault on Fallujah. Well, it turns out that that is no coincidence.
Since 1996, in response to the war on drugs, the Department of Defense transferred $4.3 billion in military equipment to local and state police. After 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security made additional equipment available to local law enforcement through federal funds for terrorism prevention.
That's right. And this has happened on such a scale that it's enabled small towns like Keene, New Hampshire, to apply for a Bearcat, a military-grade armoured personnel truck, which they needed because, as their application argued, the terrorism threat is far-reaching and often unforeseen, and cited as a possible target their annual pumpkin festival. Specifically, this pumpkin festival, which is now being protected by this. And good luck easily outmanoeuvring that teenagers with baseball bats. And if you're wondering what it feels like to have a mine-resistant vehicle on the streets of your town, I give you a YouTube video of 2 dudes from Saginaw, Michigan.
Holy shit, dude. Super armored, dude. Damn, he doesn't want anybody to see him in there. Dude, you can't even see him. Damn. That's crazy. Saginaw County Sheriff, dude. It looks cool, dude. Look how big these tires are compared to our... It's taller than... Dude. That's awesome.
Now, to be fair, that is exactly how they reacted when a Chipotle first opened there. But the point is, listen carefully as one of them suddenly realizes something.
Damn, dude, that's f***ed up. Why? Has our city gotten that f***ing bad?
Here's the thing, no. It hasn't got that bad. Because unless you live in downtown Kabul, there is no practical need for anything like that in your town. Just ask the people that it came from.
The Army itself, actually, in a newsletter a few months ago, recommended against using MRAPs even at U.S. military bases. You know, on paved streets in the United States, they're actually unsafe. They tear up the streets. They have a high rollover potential.
Exactly. The only vehicle that should be tearing up the streets of Saginaw is Chad's souped-up Honda Civic. Dude! Dude, my car is sick, dude! The police are not soldiers. So why, in this photo from Ferguson, are they wearing fucking camo? They are northwest of St. Louis, not northwest of the Amazon. If they want to blend in with their surroundings, they should be dressed as a dollar store. And also, look in the photo at where their guns are pointed. If you were actually in the military, you would know that you are not supposed to do that.
In the military, we're trained on something called escalation of force, which basically means the only time that you're really going to point a weapon directly at someone is when you're ready to pull the trigger. And instead of that, we've seen in Ferguson that police are just wandering around with their weapons up at all times, pointing them at people that obviously didn't pose a threat.
Well, they don't currently pose a threat, but, you know, it's really all about what they might do. Now, they could, for instance, join the police, be given a gun they're not trained to use properly, and then wander around pointing it at people. That would be fucking terrifying. The point is, if you are a cop in the United States, you should dress for the job you have, not the job you want. Because if you have all this equipment, it's going to go to your head. Look at Doraville, Georgia. Population 8,500. The police there got a tank a while back, and up until a few days ago, this video was on the front page of their website. We're going to stop a burglary at Little Caesars! We're going to stop a burglary at Little Caesars! The name of that song is, and this is true, Die Motherfucker Die. And it was a good choice because, believe me, that video does not pair well with Simon and Garfunkel. Now, that video was just a training exercise, but the problem is, police departments don't just use this stuff for training. Thanks in part to this kind of access to military hardware, there has been a massive rise in both the number and the use of police departments' SWAT teams.
The number of SWAT raids have gone up by 1,400% since the 1980s. An estimated 50,000 now take place every year.
Just keep that clip in mind when I tell you that 79% of SWAT deployments are now for executing search warrants, and most of those were for drug investigations. So yes, if you are getting high in your dorm room right now, you are not paranoid. There is a SWAT team outside, and they are coming to get you. All of which brings us back to this week and to Ferguson. So how do you improve things there? Well, you could demilitarize the police force to stop things looking like this, But that would just change the optics. The substance of the problem would still be there, as was embodied by a police officer on the streets of Ferguson this week who was dressed entirely normally.
Bring it! Bring it!
The phrase, "bring it, you fucking animals," is barely acceptable during a zoo escape. It's not even acceptable in the restaurant in Mary Poppins where penguins are waiters. Bring it, you fucking animal. Hey, don't treat them like that. They'll piss in your soup. They'll piss in your soup, and you'll deserve it. That kind of statement betrays an inability to see the citizens of Ferguson as individuals and instead treats them as a threatening whole. And that is a top-down problem, because last night, this is how the governor of Missouri decided to try and rebuild trust between the police and the community.
I signed an order declaring a state of emergency and ordering the implementation of a curfew in the curfew in the impacted area of Ferguson.
Oh, perfect. So you took a community tired of being treated as criminals and imprisoned them all in their own houses for a night. And in doing so, employed the tone of a pissed-off vice principal trying to restore order at an assembly.
But if we're going to achieve justice, we must first have and maintain peace. This is a test. The eyes of the world are watching.
That is profoundly patronising. Look, let's see if you can all remain quiet for 20 minutes, and then we'll see if you can all go and play outside. If even the governor can't distinguish between the good and the bad elements of the community and has decided to punish everyone equally, then that should go both ways. I know the police love their ridiculous, unnecessary military equipment, so here's another patronising test. Let's take it all away from them, and if they can make it through a whole month without killing a single unarmed black man, then, and only then, can they get their fucking toys back. Can't distinguish between the good and the bad elements of the community and has decided to punish everyone equally, then that should go both ways. I know the police love their ridiculous, unnecessary military equipment, so here's another patronising test. Let's take it all away from them, and if they can make it through a whole month without killing a single unarmed black man, then, and only then, can they get their fucking toys back. Our main story tonight concerns the past week's terrible events in Missouri.
An officer shot an 18-year-old man outside an apartment complex.
It's all today on Trisha.
Please welcome Paulette. Paulette is here because her 16-year-old grandniece, Latanya, was arrested not once, but twice for prostitution. Yep, and shamelessly admits to sleeping with 100 different men for money. Now, Paulette raised Latanya and her twin sister, Lenise, from 8 months old until they turned 13. Now, that's when they went to live with their mother, Trelonda. And that's when Paulette says Latanya became sexually out of control. Now, before we go any further, let's get a glimpse into the mind of 16-year-old Latanya.
Sex to me is money and power. I like the easy money. I've been soliciting myself and other people's bodies since I was 15 years old. I've slept with approximately 100 men for money. The oldest chick I remember sleeping with was 62 years old. I've made over $4,000 by myself, not including the money I've made off my other girls. I always have girls ask if they can work for me. When I sleep with a chick, I don't think about nothing but money,